Right. How many years did you?
Well, I know that Sharon's.
Did you raise part of your family?
Rowan should be.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that was really a nice story. Two people get started.
We get three, we're good.
Right.
Somebody was thinking you were the vice chairman, but
I remember the last one I did. Yeah. 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 I don't even know. Maybe hell, because I know it's late time, she was in the paper. And he would have to be 100. I'm 80. Yeah. Yeah, then you just keep right in the wall. I recognize you. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I know a lot. I know a lot of people who think.
Dave, how are you?
Good, thanks. Yeah. It's a new chore. It's a new chore.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Take what you're looking through.
How about you?
It's coming. Yeah. I don't hear what you're saying.
No, that's where I was told to sit anyway.
Yeah, that's.
Oh, just right back into the.
Oh, yeah.
Have a seat here.
Wherever. But still, it was.
We do. That's right.
I'm doing something similar next week.
I'm down. Yeah.
We're going to.
You can speak.
I don't know where it is.
The point is,
It's here.
I think Ted's getting introduced.
Yeah.
I don't.
It's like kind of north. West. It's actually near to. You're on.
Okay, you're up.
Yeah.
Almost by second, yeah, here the second. We've never been up there. We
John
used
is
to
coming.
always.
Oh, we get that.
Wait, she is north.
Yes.
We went there.
He's come to this, you know, present.
That was a nice place, but the people who.
So I talked to him about it.
He decided to live there.
Yeah. I'm sure it's right.
Thankfully, my father can.
Yeah.
I'm sure we can get it.
Hello.
Good to see you.
Good to see you too.
Okay.
Well, gentlemen, how are you this evening? How's Jules doing? Yes, they're doing well. I'm getting good, still getting good feedback. So. That's me for plan. I'm looking for my counsel. Maybe not yet, that's okay. All right.
I thought it was parts of the flyover. Walk out.
Okay, all right. Nothing. my town council. Do you have is my town council back in there?
Yeah.
About to go home, the doors were locked.
Oh, are they? Oh, no. Okay, well, I just. If you wanted to buy it, you could, but because you don't have one. But if you want to sell it, I'm putting it on. I just want to make. I'll serve there, that's fine. So I want to. Yeah. That's fine. So after they saw it.
I already get this.
That was- that was-
Oh, did you? I just have to-
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Okay. Oh, that's gonna be a long meeting. Yeah.
So you don't. It is 6:47 on Tuesday, July 12th. I'll call the meeting to order, and I'll ask everyone to please rise for the pledge of allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next item on the agenda is a roll call. Thomas, please call roll.
Yes, Brad Hemingway.
Here.
Dan Buckstone. Here. Wayne Specs.
Here.
Roland Ratham.
Here.
Council liaison. Is here. The chairman is.
Next item on the agenda is approval of minutes from June 14, 2022. This board had a chance to review the minutes. If so, what's the pleasure of the board?
Mr. Chairman, make a motion to approve the minutes as
Do we
presented.
have a motion? Do we have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Next item, we have preliminary hearing. We have BZA docket 22011, Tim Overmeyer of Banco Signs on behalf of People's Bank requesting variances from table 266701B, wall sign specific standards to permit a wall sign on the third floor of the west elevation of the building at 9204B Columbia Avenue. Tom, would you please give a presentation to the board on this?
I will, yes. So the applicant is requesting a variance in order to install the sign shown here on the screen. The location of the property is the corner of Franklin and Columbia Avenue. It's a CD4A district, therefore it's subject to the relevant sign standards. This particular sign is being proposed on the west face of the building, facing Calumet Avenue. It is a channel logo sign, and it's being proposed for the second floor. They're requesting 4 variances in connection with this proposal. The first is related to the quantity of signs. Our standard is that there's a maximum of 1 sign permitted per facade. A facade is defined as the street facing elevation of a building. This proposed sign is on the west side of the building and not facing a street, so therefore it's exceeds the number of signs. Second variance they're requesting is from the overall sign size. The maximum height of a sign is 24 inches for a building with a setback of less than 100 feet from the public right of way. And from their lot line. And they're requesting a 64-inch logo, 64 inches in height. The third variance is from the overall height of the sign. The maximum permitted for the overall height of a sign is 36 inches. They're requesting, as I said before, 64-inch logo. And then finally, the fourth variance is from the additional standards that prohibit a sign installed above the first story of a building. And they're proposing to install it on the third floor of this bank building. I'm going to note just a couple things, additional details about this request. People's Bank did receive a variance for a sign in this exact location. Show you where it is on this report. As you'll note from the report here, they previously had installed a People's Bank sign. That was permitted by variance in February of 2008. I had distributed both the approved signage rendering as well as the findings of fact from that previous decision. They have to come back for a variance for this chevron sign because the original sign was limited to 34 square feet, although it appears to actually have been about 45 square feet. It was basically restricted to what is shown here. So when they rebranded and wanted to replace this People's Bank sign with the chevron sign, they had to come back and comply with the current standards. They also didn't comply with the previously granted variance. This is a preliminary hearing. The applicant is here to answer any questions.
Thank you, Tom. Any questions for Tom? That being said, is someone here to speak on behalf of petitioner? Please state your name and address for the public record, please, and write it in the form.
Tim Oldmeyer, 10625 State Road 10, Argus, Indiana. Okay, actual signs. I'll just put Argus, you can find it there. So what we proposed is just the chevron. We looked at putting the entire name People's Bank with the chevron, but it was actually too large, way too large. So what we try to do is fit this in the best we can. Our square footage is less than it was there barely. It's 33 now, it's 34 before. The only thing that we're exceeding is the height. And of course, we need the variances for the location on the building. And where the old sign was, we need to do variance for that. But what we try to do with this new design is simplify it with the chevron only. And this is reverse illuminated, so the previous sign lit through the face, People's Bank lit up through the face. This is reverse, it'll just shine back on the building and be a halo effect less intrusive. But what we're trying to do is identify the building for people on Calumet turning down. This is the corporate headquarters.
Mr. Overmeyer, staff mentioned the last sign wasn't compliant with our square footage. We'll ensure that this sign will be compliant with our square
Yes,
footage.
it'll be exactly this. I don't know what happened with the last one, but and we'll be glad to run Tom up there with a tape measure. I'm sure the height.
You measure the ground before it goes up, right?
Well, I think Roland, it wasn't that it was installed differently. It was just that there was an error when they measured it on the actual rendering. So I'm not sure exactly what happened, but I don't think that they received approval for one thing and did something else. I think it was just mismeasured to begin with.
Right. Still like that. Yeah, up on the left. Any other questions for petitioner? That being said, this is a preliminary hearing.
Chairman,
Yeah.
I'll make a motion to approve for public hearing, BZA docket 22-011, and the petitioner consult with the town and also fulfill all of those requirements.
We have a motion. Can we have a second?
Hemingway, second.
Any other discussion? Tom, recall, does the voice vote on this? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. See you next month. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
The next item on the agenda is the public hearings. We have BZA docket number 22006. Paul Katz on behalf of Munster Church requesting multiple variances from the civic zone building and lot standards, private lighting standards, vehicular parking, bicycle parking, loading space and trash receptacles, and streetscape repairs, replacements, and improvements section to permit the construction of addition of the Munster Church and the construction of a new multi-purpose accessory building at the same site at 214 Ridge Road. I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, thank you. As you stated, the applicant is seeking to construct an addition to the main church building here, shown on this site plan. Demolish a number of buildings on site, slightly reconfigure the parking lot, and build an accessory building at the southeast corner of the site, along with a retention pond, or detention pond, I should say, for stormwater. They are seeking a development plan approval through the Plan Commission tonight as well. That was heard at the public hearing last month and was tabled to this evening. This petition came before the board as in a preliminary hearing last month, and there was some discussion, but the number of variances are being requested. I'll just kind of go through them. I'm not going to switch through all the different views on the screen because that would just be very cumbersome. But I'll note that there have been some changes from the previously submitted plans. Revised plans show a 6-foot vinyl fence proposed along the south edge of the east parking area. So down here on the east side of the cemetery, a privacy fence is being proposed. A dumpster enclosure is being proposed at the southeast corner of the property as well. It's shown here on the plans. And then finally, they submitted a revised landscaping plan that includes an additional 5 shade trees along the Ridge Road frontage. So south of the sidewalk on Ridge Road. The variances they're requesting are as follows. First, from the facade position standard, the building is proposed to be parallel. I'm sorry, this actually yeah. So the requirement is that a building be positioned parallel to Ridge Road, and the proposal is to essentially position the building in line with the existing church building on the straight east-west line. The second variance is from the design proportions. Our architectural standard is that all buildings, either in their entirety or in their individual components, be based on fractions using whole numbers or very specific proportions. They have a note on their building addition plans that state the average facade proportions ratio equals 1 to 4, but there's not enough detail for us to determine whether or not that standard is actually being met. The third variance is from the roof pitch requirement. We require that all buildings in the civic zone have a roof pitch that's either flat or between 812 and 1412, so a fairly steep roof pitch. They're proposing, for this I will actually flip over to the rendering. They're proposing, this is the street facing facade, street facing elevation. This section of the building meets the standard as well as the flat roof portion, but this multi-purpose room, which is situated in the south part of that addition, has a 512 pitch. Fourthly, the main entrance of the building must be in the facade of the principal frontage, meaning the main entrance of the building in this case would have to be on Ridge Road. They're proposing that the main entrance be actually on the south end of the building, south side of the building, and they're removing the pedestrian connection from Ridge Road to the doors. The fifth variance is from our standards for screening. The requirement is that the parking area be screened from residential properties to the south by a 6-foot fence or hedge. There is, as I said, a vinyl fence being proposed along the east parking lot. The west parking lot would require an additional screen, either a hedge or a fence. Next one has to do with lighting. Illumination of a parking area is required at an average of 1 to 2.5 foot candles, and they're proposing, and a minimum of 0.4 foot candles. They're proposing a lighting plan that has certain portions of the parking lot to be illuminated less than 0.4 foot candles. And all this information is provided in the staff report in more detail. Secondly, they're proposing, they're required to have colonial approach or acorn type parking lot light fixtures, so ornamental light fixtures. They're proposing that they use the existing, reuse existing, and provide some new light fixtures that would not meet that standard. They would just be simply standard parking lot commercial fixtures. Going on, parking areas, as you know, when a project of a certain scale is proposed, all landscaping of the parking lot has to be completed and brought up to compliance with the current code. So there are a number of variances being requested in connection with landscaping. The first is that landscape islands are required in existing parking lots when a new building is constructed. These would be required at a ratio of 1 for every 10 parking spaces, as well as located on the end of every parking row. So for example, here is the end of a parking row. Those would be required to be landscape islands. Both of those standards are not being met, so they're requesting 2 variances, 1 from each of those standards. Thirdly, for every 2,000 square feet of parking area or parking lot, at least 1 tree is required to be installed or preserved within the parking lot. And we calculated that out to be approximately 20 trees for the east parking area and 11 for the west parking area. But we don't have any calculation provided to determine whether or not they're complying with that. Again, related to trees, this second standard is that no parking space will be more than 72 feet from a tree within a lot. And again, there are additional trees proposed east of the parking area, but it appears that in both parking lots there are parking spaces that are farther than 72 feet from the tree. And then finally, anytime, again, a project of this scale is completed, we require that the street in front of the building be brought up to compliance with our streetscape standards, with the thoroughfare standard. And if there is not sufficient right-of-way or space within in front of the building, then it's required to be installed on the property. So they obviously meet the standard for a sidewalk because it's already there. But they are required to have shade trees planted 30 feet on center. Again, we did a calculation and we estimate that this would be approximately 14 shade trees the entire length of the Ridge Road frontage. And it looks to me like they're proposing 7 additional trees. And again, this was increased from the previous submittal. So they have done some work to try to comply with that standard. That's the extent of the variance request. Yeah.
Any questions from the commission to Tom?
Yeah. Yes. The parking lot on the east side, it's only partially screened out the fence.
The parking lot on the east side is completely screened. So the only screen that would be required would be along the west side here.
Got it. Thank you.
Any other questions? Is someone here to like to speak on behalf of the petitioner?
Hi, my name is Ted Roan with Roan Associates Architects. I'm here representing the church. I'm joined by Don Turinga with Turing Engineers
He's the site engineer, can answer any questions related to site engineering. Paul Katz representing the church. Fred Kruzwig is our landscape designer and installer. So any questions regarding specifics on landscaping, he can maybe help out. And then Pastor Jim Hollandoner is here as well. He was unable to attend last time, but he watched his wonderful video. So thanks, Jim, for being here. I'm going to try to keep this brief. We did a dog and pony show last time that went fairly long. We want to make sure you have a good understanding of the project. I want to just reiterate a few things. I'm just going to go down a few things that he brought up to tell you. You said we've already addressed some of them. I just want to give some explanations so that maybe it'll help better understand what we're doing. Just want to remind everyone, we are removing 4 buildings to do this project. We're removing the parsonage, which sits really right dead center where the new addition is going. So that's going to be tore down. And then 3 more accessory buildings. We call them accessory buildings. They're basically garages. So we feel by just removing those and replacing them with the new accessory building and the new addition, it's already going to beautify things, as well as create a big green landscape area on the east side of the east parking lot. The new addition is a little over 13,000 square feet, and it's used primarily, like I said last time, for children's ministries, new offices, fellowship area, and we're creating we're adding a new elevator to make the entire building accessible, even to their existing basement, which is not accessible at this point. So that's the goal, is to make the whole building. The entrances on the east and south side are ADA accessible with ramps as well. I do want to point out that we are connecting Ridge Road to the main addition with a walkway on the east side of the new addition, which meets all the ADA standards for access to that rear portion, which is the main part of their building. And then the accessory building is used mainly for cadets, children's stuff, shop area, storage, food pantry, and meeting rooms. We're doing no work to the west parking lot, west side of the cemetery of the building at all. So that's why we haven't addressed any, adding islands and stuff like that to the project. So the front entry, we have the new addition as a front entry facing the street, and the old building, the original building, has a main entry, which has a sidewalk and stairs that lead down the Ridge Road. The church feels strongly that they want to remove those stairs and create a raised terrace patio area that Fred will beautifully landscape and tear it down with retaining. It's used because they have a lot of functions. If there's weddings, people come out, and it just feels unsafe to have those stairs lead directly to Ridge Road. Nobody uses those stairs to come to the church. Everybody drives to the church. So they've requested that variance so they can have a safe gathering place. And also, if they're in the event of a fire or some emergency, people can exit those front doors and go out to the west parking lot as opposed to down to the street sidewalk. So that's a little explanation of why we want to do that there. The roof pitch on the rear multi-purpose room, we're allowed to do a flat roof. I believe we're allowed to do a shed roof too, but it made no sense with the architecture to do either of those on the multi-purpose. So the reason we're not doing a tall peak is on the front elevation, you'd see it would raise much higher than the other piece of the building. And so it didn't make sense to raise that. So we've kept, I think, a 512 pitch or something on that rear roof so that it all aligns with yeah, there you go. That's the best way. It just wouldn't look right if we had a taller peak in the back. And it is at the far back of the building that you really can't see from Ridge Road. We'll talk about lighting real quickly. We meet all the lighting requirements except for a small, we talked about this last time, a small portion of the rear of the parking lot. We have no light spillage onto the neighbors, but there's a small little area that we're slightly under 0.4. It's not even going to be noticeable to, the photometrics show it. And we are not using acorn lights because those kind of lights are hard to direct the light and to get them to light close to the property line and keep that. So we've used the newer type light fixtures so we can direct the light. We also, I just want to remind you that one of the neighbors to the south of us last time came up and spoke, and he kindly asked you to maybe approve that part of it because he wants less light near the south property line where the residents are. Landscaping, if this were a brand new project, a brand new site, we put all the islands in the way the ordinance says, but this is all existing parking that we're doing minor modifications to. So we've added some new islands directly south of the building where the new entry is. And I just want to remind everybody, if you look at the site plan again, we have some huge islands. One is called a cemetery with lots of trees. And most parking lots aren't going to be shielded by almost like a park-like setting, but it is a cemetery. And then the new landscape area to the east, I told you about. And then the other thing I want to point out is the landscaping across the front. I think you've seen some of the landscaping at the corner of Holman and Ridge. That theme thread is continuing across the whole front of Ridge Road. So he can explain, I think, why we may not be able to meet the 20 tree requirement across front, or how many?
One tree every 30 feet.
One, yeah, there's some utilities and stuff like that, but he's going to go above and beyond. This will be the nicest landscaping along the entire face of Ridge Road that you'll see, hands down, along that roadway. So, but we feel like we have an abundance of landscaping to help make up for the islands. To put islands in an existing parking lot like that would reduce the number of parking spaces. It would change the water flow. It'd be quite expensive and cost prohibitive. So that's why we're asking for that. And as mentioned, the church stepped up and agreed to do a new concrete curb along the south boundary with the residents and put the privacy fence up. I may have covered everything, but I wanted to just give some further explanation.
Is there any questions for the petitioner? One thing I would mention is, I think we should run that fence to the west to continue down there. You have 3 houses that aren't shielded by the parking lot down there. That fence should run all the way down, at least to the last house on the west side.
You know, what's interesting is we landscaped that several years ago, and that the gentleman that lives in that corner house on Holman, he loved what we did. And so I think to block him off from that little landscape thing that we did, I think he'd probably be disappointed, but.
It's a consistent theme that we usually have. If you look at the property next to you, they have a fence that runs kind of guards. Same thing, any kind of commercial property, we always try to block the headlights from the neighbors that are there. My other question for Mr. Tranga, with the new curb, is that going to ensure that water is going to run?
Yes,
Everything
it will.
sheet drains in that property. I drove out there today. There's no sewers in a whole lot. Everything sheet drains.
Well, there are sewers.
Are there any, see any just driving?
There are French drains that go.
Okay.
They're just dry basins. I don't know how much water they actually take up, but what we have done is we have taken what is currently an asphalt curb, and we're taking that out. We're putting an actual curb with gutter in there so that the water can be captured before it passes over the south end of the parking lot. And we're redirecting it towards the detention.
And that curb's high enough to take our worst rains.
Oh, sure, it's 6 inches high. Yeah. I would say the asphalt curb worked perfectly fine. It was 6 inches high. So the only reason that it didn't work is because the snow plows hit it and tore holes in it. So,
Thank you.
well,
When this is done, what are we doing with the trailers and the cargo box that are just sitting on the property? Because I don't know if we get permits for sitting there, getting rid of them.
The trailers will, do I have questions?
Just state your name and address for the call.
Okay. Jim Holland, owner, 1517 Melbrook Drive, in the wonderful town of Munster, Indiana. So the trailers that we have, they will be, one will be put in the accessory building in its garage that will hold storage and all of those. The other one will be put in the very south end of that, even in the parking lot, unable to be seen from any cars, as you will see, as you will note on the very south end of the accessory building, where we call it the ministry house. So both of those will be moved. The big storage container will be gone. You know, so they'll be all that will be gone.
Great, thank you. Any other questions? That being said, we're looking at, oh, that's right. I thought we had a last one. We continue it now.
This is just for the development.
Well, since this is the public hearing, I will open it up to the public at the time. Is there anyone here that'd like to speak on behalf of on behalf of the public? No one online raising their hand down?
I don't see anyone.
Going once? Going twice? I'll close the public hearing and bring it back to the commission.
Mr. President, I did have one question for Tom. When you said you suggest, I'm not a voting member of the BZA, but I just wanted to ask for some clarification. So when you said that if you were to approve it, you would want a direct sidewalk from bridge to the front door.
That would be my suggestion.
But can they do it the way they said with still tiering it? Or is that, so you're saying not?
It would have to, I mean, it would, there'd be a break in the terraced landscape in order to provide that.
Because you can do it from the, I think when I was there to see the tulip, I drove in the parking lot. You can go up to the door in that parking lot, but I can't remember if you can get from the parking lot to the sidewalk. And
From which parking lot?
from the parking lot to the west, this level with the front door.
Yes, there are steps up to where the tulip is.
Right, but
Yeah.
then from that parking lot, can you get to the sidewalk below it
Yes,
without going on the stairs?
there's a
No.
there's a sidewalk that goes to the east. That goes to the east, around to the east entrance.
Okay. Because just from being out there and seeing, I know what you mean about the safety, because my mom and I, well, we felt unsafe our entire journey down Ridge trying to look at tulips. She felt quite challenged, unfortunately. But anyway, I think the way you've done the landscaping looks really nice, and I can see that being like a really nice place for people to come out after church and gather without the stairs. But like I said, I'm not a voting member of the BZA, but I just wanted to clarify that.
Any other thoughts?
Mr. Chairman, make a motion to approve multiple variances from the civic zone building and lot standards, private lighting standards, vehicle parking, bicycle parking, load space and trash receptacles, and streetscape repairs, replacements, and improvement sections submitted under BZA docket 22-006 to permit the construction of addition to the Munster Church and the construction of a new multi-purpose accessory building on the same site at 214 Ridge Road, with one condition that the entire south lot be screened with a fence that meets town standards to the west end of that parking lot.
We have a motion on the floor. Do we have a second?
I'm going second.
We have a second, any discussion? That being said, I'll call a roll vote. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion passes. Next item on the agenda, we have BZA docket number 22008, Larry Gill on behalf of Capital Bethel, requesting approval of variances from table 266405B to allow 6-foot vinyl fence at a frontage and at a frontage and the first lot layer in the civic zone at 10001 Columbia Ave. Tom, will turn this over to you.
Okay, thank you. The applicant is requesting the installation of a 6-foot fence along the Columbia Avenue frontage of the Temple Bethel building located there at the corner of Palmer Singleton Drive and Columbia Avenue. They're requesting 2 variances in order to do that. The first is from the maximum height of a fence at a frontage, which is 3.5 to 4 feet. So having a fence on the west side, that's considered frontage, and therefore they're restricted to 3.5 to 4 feet. And they're proposing a 6-foot fence. And then secondly, from the material standards, because this is an area between the building and the street, it's considered the first lot layer and a secondary frontage. And our ordinance permits vinyl fencing in the 3rd lot layer only. They're proposing a vinyl fence in the 1st lot layer. So those are the 2 variances that they're requesting. As we discussed at the preliminary hearing, they are seeking this variance in order to increase the security of their building and grounds alongside Columbia, and it was a recommendation that was provided to them by the Munster Police Department in light of the religious violence that's taken place in our country over the past few years. They would like it for two reasons. One, to screen their outdoor patio from Columbia Avenue, and then two, just to provide a visual barrier, just as a means of not attracting unwanted attention. I've provided a rendering or the spec sheet for the proposed fence in the packet. And I think Larry Gill is here with a material sample if you'd like to see it. And again, this is a public hearing.
Thank you. Any questions for Tom? That being said, is someone here to speak on behalf of the petitioner? Yes. Please state your name, address, and fill out the form on the.
Larry Gill, 1310 Vivian, Munster. Hi. Yeah, we're just looking for to secure our building, our property. Benefit of this particular fence is that it has a steel beam at the bottom and the top to protect the property. So it gives a little more security against somebody just kind of ramming through. Also, it provides privacy, and we expect this way we can use the patio, the back lot there for activities. And also we anticipate a lot more traffic on Columbia Avenue with the railway station going down on Main Street. So this will give us the privacy that we like to have. And the third benefit is it provides a windbreak for us. So when we erect a small building, past, the wind has turned it into a pretzel. And we're hoping with this fence that we have more than work on it.
Thank you, Mr. Gill. Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Gill? That being said, I'm going to turn this over to the public for a public hearing. Is anyone here to speak on behalf of the public regarding this petition? There's more people online. Tom, anyone online? Come up, state your name and address for the record, please.
Marion Marcus, 1907 Redwood Lane in Munster. I'm a Munster resident, but I'm also a member of the Temple. So I just wanted to say there are several reasons we chose the fence. I'm also on the security committee, and I assisted with obtaining the federal grant money to do the security upgrades. This design actually matches the facade of our building. I don't know if you're familiar with the building, but it's a stone facade, and that's would blend in much nicer than a typical vinyl fence. It's a step up from a typical vinyl fence. So I just wanted to point that out. I don't think it's going to look as I think it's classier than a typical vinyl fence, and it's going to blend well with our building, including the color of it. And I think, we've all unfortunately heard in the news that any public gathering is fair game for some sort of violence to occur, unfortunately. And, we have limited our outdoor events because we don't feel safe. And that's very sad in this day and age that people have to worry about gathering, particularly at a religious event. And there are some events during the year that are traditionally to be held outside. So this really would enable us to more freely practice our religious beliefs, have the events that we want to have. Whereas the 3.5 or 4 foot fence would not serve that purpose. So thank you
Thank
for
you,
your
Ms. Marcus.
consideration.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak on behalf of the public regarding this petition? Going once? Going once? Going twice? I'll close the public hearing and bring it back to the commission.
Tom, can you clarify, so the fence is gonna run along Columbia Avenue?
That's correct. Yeah, it'll extend out in this picture, in this image. North is to the right. And this is actually, I think there's an error in this drawing because it's not going to bisect the parking lot, but it'll extend out to the west along Columbia Avenue from the front of the building. Go along Columbia and then curve back at this parking lot.
It's going to start at the northwest corner of the building, go out about 8 feet or so, then parallel Columbia Avenue. And then when it hits the southwest corner of the building, it'll turn east and be adjacent to the corner of the building on the southwest side.
Thank you.
Any other questions for petitioner? That being said,
Mr. Chairman,
yes, Mr. Russell.
make a motion to approve the variances from table 26-6.405B to allow 6 foot vinyl fence as frontage and in the first lot layer of the civic zone at 10,001 Columbia Avenue, according to BZA docket 22-008.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Any other discussion? Call the voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. The next item we have on the agenda is BZA docket number 22009. Janine Graham on behalf of Gem Med Spa requesting a variance from the Centennial Village Plan Unit Development Design Standards Section 11.7 to permit a second principal sign at the 9610 North Centennial Drive. Tom, I'll turn this over to you.
Thank you. The applicant is proposing 2 signs to be installed on the tenant space here in Building G of Centennial Village Plan Unit Development. For reference, it's located here on this southeast corner of the building. They have 2 tenant spaces on the sort of on the rounded corner there. What they're proposing to do is install, as I said, 2 signs. They've rented two tenant spaces, and they're proposing a sign over each space. The variances that they're requesting are from the Centennial Village Plan Unit Development Design Standards, which are a little bit different from our normal sign standards. They're a little bit more restrictive in some ways. But in this PUD, section 11.7 of the design standards states that each business within multi-tenant buildings will be permitted 1 principal sign. And such signs may be wall mounted. As you can see, it's fairly simple. They're permitted 1 sign and they're proposing 2. And that's why they need the variance. I just have some additional explanation on this development. I'll note that there are other businesses within the Centennial Village PUD that occupy multiple tenant spaces, including those that have multiple entry doors. And none of those businesses as of yet have been permitted more than 1 principal business sign. I provided one example here. Staff report. You can see this is building B, which is on the corner of 45th Street and Calumet Avenue. Midwest Orthopedics at Rush occupies this entire east portion of the building. There's clearly a place here where they could have a second sign. In fact, there's an entry door there, but they've been restricted to a single sign. So I would, based on that, and based on the anticipation that there will be additional tenants in these buildings that will occupy multiple spaces. My recommendation is that we do not, is that the board do not approve this variance. I don't find that this is a unique situation, not experienced by other businesses within the district. I'll also add that this is a public hearing.
Questions for Tom?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman. Tom, in your professional opinion, if this variance were granted and precedence was established, do you believe the other tenants and individuals within that area would come before this board seeking their own?
I would, yes, predict that that wouldn't happen.
Thank you.
One question I have is, there, the two signs there, the one little sign that's hanging off to the right,
Yeah, that's just an additional sign that is permitted. It's a blade sign or projecting sign.
I like that sign, that's cool.
So they have a permit application in for that sign. That's not part of this variance. They can have that irrespective of whether or not this variance is granted.
Chairman,
Yes.
you have other buildings similar to this that'll be developed later. This issue be coming back up. Probably have those other buildings.
Yeah, there will be at least one other identical building to this building being constructed directly to the south. And then there will be two very similar buildings built to the east.
Tom, here's my thoughts on that, because a couple weeks ago, I was at the Green in Ohio, which has this kind of a development that's going on. On the taller buildings, they had more signage on than the one-story buildings. The one-story buildings were kept to, like you talked about with the Midwest thing. They had one sign each one. When I walked to the taller ones, they had more signage. And I don't know if that's to get foot traffic over those taller buildings because they're on the interior lot layer compared to the perimeter, but it was a unique concept that I noticed on signs when I walked around, because you want to get people in those smaller storefronts because you don't want empty storefronts in town. That's the worst thing you can have in that development. So I was just kind of kicking that around. These weren't like big obtrusive signs, and they matched the building nice in a classy way. It just brought people into the taller buildings that people are thinking are more residential in nature with a first floor, which we're not used to having that in Munster yet. And that's the only reason I was kicking that around in my head, because I was just at that development in Ohio, and they kind of had this kind of setup. So that was just my thoughts on it.
To follow up on that, Roland, are those awnings already out there? I mean, can they change those awnings where there's not the support there and center that and make it kind of one sign and center it over that?
No, those awnings are in place. There's no way to, and the applicant is here, he or she, whoever is representing, can probably speak a little bit more to it, but those two frontages are separated by both the awning and by a architectural sort of projection. So it's almost like a column that sticks out from the front of the face of the building. And the building is curved as well. So a flat sign sitting on a curved face would be set off from the face of the building.
Questions or comments?
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah.
I know that we worked very, very hard with the standards for this. And the sign that hangs out to the side that you mentioned that you liked a lot, that one has Gem Med Spa on it. I mean, like you can see, even if that middle one, the black sign isn't there, it just seems obvious to me that that's their place, I mean, and I know that the other business around the corner is doing quite well, the boutique. I just think if we end up with, I do think that everybody will come, everybody wants more signage, as we seem to hear that monthly. It's a common theme. So just from the standpoint of keeping things classy and clean, that's why we worked on those standards that Mr. Vanderwood is talking to right now.
As a new member of the BZA, I really struggle with this signage thing because if I'm going somewhere, put it in my phone. I'm not looking for something. If I'm going to Target, I know where Target's at, and it's trying to track me to Target. If I'm going to, Katie's Boutique, I put it in my phone and go in there. So I don't know that signage draws people in. And I also understand small businesses need for signage to let people know that they're there. If they're over at Katara when they're eating dinner, say, hey, that's about over there. So I struggle with this part.
Any other questions or comments? That being said, I'll turn it over to the petitioner, someone here to speak on behalf of the petitioner. Please state your name and address for all the record and sign the form.
Good evening, my name is Gus Galante. I live at 1510 Somerset Drive. In Monster. Kind of feel like Groundhog Day here. Anybody ever see that movie? So I'm doing this all over again. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to present here. I think several important points have been brought up, and I think I've got some points that will help clear those up. First of all, I think it's important to know that I've been a resident of Munster since 1967. I said that last time. Why is that important? Because I'm vested here. We researched many towns and several properties, and we chose Munster for a reason. One of the reasons is because I live here and I want to beautify the place. I want my taxes to go for significant purposes. So we chose this place. We think it's going to beautify Centennial Village and the community in general. Just to remind you, surgery, I'm a plastic surgeon. Surgery is done in the operating room. This is a med spa. It's not a day spa where nails and hair and massage. This is medical treatments that are done by medical personnel. I personally am going to be the medical director. So being a legitimate business in that standpoint. So there's 2 suites, as you can see. We've taken 2 suites, and there's 2 entryways, as you mentioned. And there's 2 doors, but the issue here is the restriction that we have. If I can maybe show the board, and then I'll show the audience here. But one of the main points, first of all, this is a very small sign. We don't have a lot of real estate, and I understand your point about Target, but Target has a huge Target. I mean, it's very visible. This is a very small sign real estate wise, and the other businesses are long. They have the real estate to do this. We can't do that. If you use this, if you try and put Gem and Med Spa together, it's going to be a very small font, and it's just not going to look right, and it's not going to be pretty. We have to separate it. There are these supports. So number one, there's a support. So we cannot have one long sign. That's really important against what Tom is saying. The second reason, as you said, this is a right angle here. We can't put a sign that goes across. All the other businesses that might request, okay, for an argument, they say, hey, they have 2 signs. Well, this is the reason. Okay, there's a right angle here. All the other places have a straight. Okay, Katie Rose has a lot of real estate there. That's right next to us, and they can put one long sign. We are restricted by that because of the curve, because of the angle, and also because of these supports. There's one cement support here that we can't do one door. So for those reasons, I think it's pretty obvious that we need 2. The third thing is, at night, these are lit up, which is really nice. It makes it pretty. This sign on the side isn't lit up, okay? But these 2 are. And at nighttime, when people need to be able to see where they're going, there's this green. It's not black. It's actually in green. Will be lit from behind, so it'll be really beautiful. just to show the audience really quick what I'm talking about. This is a very small sign, so if you try and put Gem Med Spa in this little space, it's not gonna look right. This is a curve, okay, almost right angle, so there's no way we can put a sign across here. And I said, all the other businesses that might come along and say, hey, Gem Med Spa has two, well, there's a reason, we had to break it up into 2 points. So if you can see that, this is at an angle. We cannot put this across because of the curve and also because of these supports that are here. So we see that. So those are the restrictions that we have based architecturally. So I just wanted to see if, if there's any questions. Like I said, I think we're paying taxes on 2 suites, and other places probably are doing the same. But we want to make sure that we have as much visibility as possible. And based on these restrictions, we can't do that. So we're requesting an extra sign for that reason.
Any questions for petitioner?
Chairman, Dr. Galante, is your practice, will your practice be accepting walk-in patients?
Yes.
Any other questions for Dr. Lanta?
Is the sign gonna be green and black, or is it gonna be one same
It-
color?
It's all green. Yeah, I don't know how that happened. I think they're just doing one color, but the sign's gonna be green. That's their logo.
Because I would argue that the way it's looked at right now, it looks like 2 different places.
Yeah, I don't know how that came across. I think,
The copy.
yeah, I don't know. I can tell you it's all one color. It's Gem Med Spa. And they have 2 businesses. I'm partnered with 2 nurses one in Orland Park and one in Elmhurst, and it's the same thing. We just want to keep the logo and the brand very consistent.
Tom, you showed a comparison. Can I ask a question?
Yeah, absolutely.
On the next page, you show the Midwest Orthopedics. Is comparison to square footage, is that sign, that Midwest Orthopedic sign at Rush, which has 14 words in it, is that square footage wise, is that comparable to this med spa, because they have a limited spaces to, they're above the door, above their doors to put a sign?
I don't have at hand the exact square footage of that sign, but I can say intuitively that Midwest Orthopedic sign is significantly larger than the sign being proposed for Gem Med Spa.
And they
I
also
also-
have one on both sides of the building, right?
Correct.
One
They
on
also
both.
have, yes, and they also have a blade sign, a projecting sign on the east side as well, which is visible in this image. I will note that this was noted in the staff report that even if they were granted the variance for the 2 signs, they would not exceed the permitted area, sign area. So they're not proposing a sign or set of signs that is larger than what would be permitted. It's simply the number of signs that they're seeking the variance for.
So the square footage is still below what's permitted.
That's correct.
Again, we're restricted because of the angle in the building, because of the supports between the 2 walls.
And I also believe, Leanne, you brought up Katie Rose, their sign is probably every big as those 2 signs for the same square footage. They're just broken up with 2 different signs. You know what I mean? So if Dr. Galante did not have that awning there, he could fit 1 sign across that whole thing and still meet the code.
Sure.
That's why that's unique.
As a plastic surgeon, can you work that? Does that work?
I don't know, that cement I'd have to, these guys here, the engineers, and Mr. Raffin.
Well, now that I know that it's not black and green, that was really throwing me.
It's one.
I'm a visual person. That was rather
Yeah. no, I agree.
shocking to see.
Yeah, my apologies for that. I don't know why that happened, but it's green. I think it would be really pretty.
You said it's backlit. It's like, so
Yes.
Tom, are they appropriate? It's a sign that we have proven there because
Yeah, it would similar to the Katie Rose sign. So it would be just the lettering would be illuminated.
So if these two were butted together with no supports, it would meet the code, correct?
That's correct.
You just can't do it because of steel supports. So it's an architectural design, like Dr. Conti said. in the building. Any other question for petitioner? That being said, I'll open it up to a public hearing. Thank you, Dr. Conti. Is anyone here to speak on behalf of the public regarding this petition? Tom, do you see anyone online?
No one is indicating that they want to speak on this.
Going once? Going twice? I'll close the meeting and bring it back to the commission.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman, I just have concerns that this will set precedents and we'll be getting a deluge of signage requests.
Remember, every petition is unique to its concern, right? Absolutely. So,
Yeah, I understand where our partner over there has his concerns, but I think because of the design of the building, make a motion to approve BZA docket 22-009 variance of the application for the proposed building signs, the building facade, 9610 North Centennial Drive.
we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second, Hemingway.
Is there any further discussion? I just like to make sure it's on the record that both signs are going to match the same color. And obviously you stated that.
Well, I think, yeah, I mean, as we discussed, this is a unique circumstance. This is a unique part of this building. It's, the Midwest Orthopedics comes back, they're not gonna get a sign variance. This is a completely different scenario, and it's independent signage, and that's why I make the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Speck. We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Tom, I'll call a roll call on this one.
Brad Hemingway,
Yes.
Dan Buxa,
No.
Brian Specht,
Yes.
and Roland Raffin.
Yes.
Carries.
Thank you, Dr. Galante. Please work with staff regarding your signs.
Thank you very much.
Next item on the agenda is finding of facts, BZA 22004. As commission had a chance to review this finding of fact, so
Mr. Chairman,
yes.
make a motion to approve the findings of fact for BZA 22-004 as presented.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Hemingway, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Next item is BZA 22010, findings of fact. As commission had a chance to review this.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Mr.
to
President.
make a motion to approve findings of fact as presented with numbers 010.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Comment or any additional items for discussion?
No.
The next regular business meeting is August 9th, 2022. And look for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
We have a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, everyone.
Anytime we're looking, we can't, you're like, you said the next one.
I know.
Oh.
So.
My daughter.
You don't have to wear your mask.
I know, I want to.
You don't have to wear it.
I
had it right before I went to Europe, so I'm probably still getting the antibodies. So
I feel the same way. I had it 6 weeks ago and I was like, my grandma. All right, thank you.
Oh, God. That's good, yeah. Right.
Yeah, sometimes there are. Sometimes.
Please, pretty please.
Evening.
That looks good.
Log in.
Anybody else want to go on? This is.
Take everything.
They brought him in with his, like just, he walked one, struck out one, walked another, line drive to third. So he did pretty well. I mean, yeah, I mean, when you come in both bases loaded, that's pretty tough. Yeah, yeah. Of course, I'm this No, he's on Lake Station. He's on a American Legion team. Yeah. Mike was giving me some.
Somebody asked, and I
Oh, look at that.
just don't share. Everyone, you give me one.
Whenever you're ready. Next meeting. I land like 2:05.
Where you guys going?
Croatia, Germany, Austria.
Weren't you supposed to do that last year?
This is at Bowling Green.
That's right. I was gonna say. I
Well, we
thought-
did, and I did go to Austria last year.
I love Austria.
You see the fires now?
Yes, good for them, but I was so bummed because, well, of
He
course,
was in it, so.
I know she is. But then, of course, here, junior year, his draft, national draft, his senior year, the plan had it right too, because it had such a good reputation. You know, it was such, but yes, that's. What do you want to We went to New York, and that's closer, but yeah, Austria.
The only problem is they come back in like 4th of July, so it's literally.
Oh.
You know, so it's like.
But yes, I'm sure at some point it was.
I missed my
I thought it was
third
in
part.
May.
No, it's in July.
Oh, I missed it. I thought it was saw it was at,
I wish it was in May.
we took our school. to go to- Yeah, in the States. But it wasn't. But yeah, that's really, I haven't told them, he'll be happy for the children when you.
Yeah, phone, right? No, I like it. I kind of push that. I let it do. That's kind of push that.
Yeah, and I think, Mr. Robinson would, you know, we started all these invitations, we started doing things in Chicago,
Totally different.
just with big, you know, very noble things. That's, it's great.
You just tell what you're right.
Summer's going fast. I like it. I never like, I hate the early start. I've told everybody to listen. I hate the early start. There's no time, you know, it's. Oh, weddings off, yeah. Oh, they said some people have. Well, that's. I read an article, at least a good thing your kids were favorite jobs because. Well, seriously.
Projects you would put on this agenda for us?
Well, we started to have
How would you?
Might as well
I
put
know
that
that
in
was
there.
me. I had to claw my way out of that.
Yeah, let's talk about introduction.
Yeah, that intrigue, so. I don't know what any of those.
You ready, Tom?
Yeah, I think it is.
It is 7:57, Tuesday, July 12th, 2022. I will call the planning commission meeting to order. Would everyone please rise for the pledge of allegiance? Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Tom, would you please call roll?
Counselor Mellon,
Present.
Counselor Kulturitis.
Present.
Counselor Tulowitzki is absent. Rachel Brannigan,
Present.
Bill Baker,
Present.
Brian Specht,
Present.
Roland Raffin.
Here. Next item on the agenda is approval minutes from May 24, 2022, the special meeting. Has everyone had a chance to review the meeting? What's the pleasure of the commission?
I move we approve the minutes as given.
Second.
We have a motion, and a second, any discussion? I will call votes. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. The first item on the agenda is preliminary hearings, PC docket number 22011, Time Equities, Inc., represented by, is it Aben Marque? Marsh, request approval of a preliminary plot for the Rose re-subdivision of Lot 1 and Ridgewood development, a two-lot commercial subdivision located at 300 to 332 Ridge Road. Now I'll turn this over to you for staff report.
Okay, the applicant is requesting that the property currently known as the Ridgewood Plaza is currently a single lot, be subdivided into two lots. There's currently a Applebee's restaurant on the east side of the property and a multi-tenant retail center on the west side. This property was replatted and approved as planned unit development in 1996, which is why it contains two buildings on a single lot. And the proposal is to simply draw a line between the two buildings from north to south to create two individual development lots. They're here tonight to seek a public hearing for a preliminary plat. I'll just note that there are some easements being provided on the east lot, lot 2, to provide access into lot 1. And they are seeking some waivers from our subdivision ordinance. Those are listed here. The first is that from section 26-313B, which states that the depth to width ratio of a usable area of a lot shall be a maximum of 3.5 to 1.0, except no lot shall be more than 300 feet deep. Both of the lots shown here exceed that 300-foot depth. And then secondly, they're asking, well, as shown on the plat, they would be requesting a waiver from section 26-340A, which states that at street intersection, the property line corner shall be rounded by an arc of at least 20 feet in radius. That would be the northeast corner here at the intersection of Manor Avenue and Ridge Road. The applicant is here to speak to this petition. That it's a preliminary hearing for a preliminary plat and requesting a public hearing next month.
Thank you, Tom. Any questions for Tom regarding this petition?
Mr. Chairman, I do.
Mr. Baker.
So this looks like it's a regular development cleanup to the point where they're gonna make another lot for the Applebee's, which is a restaurant, obviously. So it's separate from the multi-tenant building. My question is, there's only one easement from Manor into the multi-tenant side. Why isn't there one coming around the building so they can be able to access that way? Is there only from Ridge Road?
No, that's a good question, and we have advised the petitioner to revise the plat to show easements on lots 1 as well. To connect the rear of the building and to ensure that there's cross access between those parking lots.
Thank you.
Any other questions for staff? That being said, is someone here to speak on behalf of the petitioner? Please sign in at the podium and state your name and address for public record.
Good evening, my name is Richard Piazza with Dapper Marsh Consulting, 111 East Third Street, Colbert is our office address, and I'm a project manager for the site. As for the 20-foot radius, the current subdivision doesn't have it. We can show it, if we can dedicate that as right away in the future, we have no issues with that. As for the ingress and egress easement, we separated the two, allowing lot 1 still to get the manor. We didn't see that Applebee's needed an access to get to Ridge Road. I figured it'd be more restrictive. That's what you guys would want, but you guys want an ingress egress easement to Ridge, we can show that as well. The current lot is owned by the same person. It's going to be owned by the same person in the future. They start to subdivide it off and refinance the Applebee's lot. But in the future, if it does get sold off, the easement will be in place for the next time.
Thank you. Any questions for the petitioner? Nope. That being said, what's the pleasure of the commission regarding this preliminary hearing?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to set this for public hearing, please.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All voice vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Please work with staff regarding meeting all the requirements for sentence for public hearing.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Next item on the agenda is a preliminary hearing. It's PC docket number 22013, Maple Leaf Crossing LLC, requesting approval from an amendment to the Maple Leaf Crossing Plan Unit Development to permit a restaurant and cigar lounge on lot 7 in the Maple Leaf Crossing PD at 9410, 9470 Calumet Avenue. I will turn this over to you for staff report.
Thank you. The subject property, 9410, 9470 Calumet Avenue, was rezoned as a planned unit development in July 2020. It's a 6-acre parcel at the intersection of Calumet Avenue and the CN Railroad track south of the Pepsi bottling facility. It contains 7 development lots, which are shown here on this plan. The north 2 are under development currently. The one in the northeast corner, lot 1, is under development as a 4-story office building. Lot 2 is under development as a hotel. The next project that they're seeking approval for is lot 7, which you can see is shown here on this site plan. It's the only one that does over. It's the one shown in the darker outline. And the proposal is to develop that lot with a 6,400 square foot cigar bar and restaurant. It's been described as a 3 or 4 story, depending on if you count the rooftop building, and original plan, as it was approved in 2020, showed a 2,700 square foot pub. So consequently, they are seeking an amendment to the PUD, both the development standards and the site plan, which were adopted as part of the ordinance enacting the plan unit development, in order to basically amend the document to add a section that specifically references the development of Lot 7 as the cigar bar shown here. And then also to amend the overall site plan to eliminate the 2,700 square foot pub and replace it with this cigar bar. I'll note that there's an additional petition that's before the plan commission tonight for the approval of the development plan. So that'll be sort of a detailed approval of the building and the lot. But I would expect that this would kind of go hand in hand with the review and approval. So the PUD ordinance will basically adopt that development plan as part of the overall PUD. So
Don't we usually do this, Tom, don't we usually do this first before we bring it to a developmental plan review? The steps?
Yeah, typically one would do that. However, the applicant who is purchasing the lot to develop it was moving forward a little bit faster than the developer of the plan unit development. And the application was submitted prior to the PUD amendment application, and public notice was made for a public hearing for the development plan. So while we are tonight looking at having a preliminary hearing for the PUD amendment, the subsequent approval of the development plan later this evening, if we choose to do so, would have to be contingent upon ultimately the town council approving the amendment to the PUD. So, so yes, that is the typical order. But at the same time, I think the information that they're providing as part of the development plan is relevant, I think, to the decision that will be made by the plan commission whether or not to issue a favorable recommendation to the town council. So I think it does make sense that they presented simultaneously. In the staff report, I've included a description of both the building and the use. I'll note that the proposed use, as I said, is for a cigar bar. That is not specifically identified in the PUD development standards as a permitted use. But there is a line in there that says the board may permit such other uses as approved by the plan commission or town council. And then there are also development standards that do apply to this. There are a few different standards that I'll just draw your attention to that I think are something that you might want to review whether or not they, meet your approval, because there's a bit of a discretionary situation on some of these. So I'll just point your attention to the district standard, which identifies the main entrance as being clearly distinguishable from the front of the building. And now I'm going to go to the building renderings so you get a good sense of how this is going to work. You can kind of get a sense of what this building is that's being proposed. Just for reference, this is the east face of the building. So this is facing out towards Calumet Avenue. This is the south facing elevation, so that's facing down towards the CN railroad tracks. And then this elevation shown here would be the north facing elevation. So to go back to the site plan, the main entrance, so the main entrance is on the east side of the building. That's that facade that I was showing you before. basically this is the east face. The question is whether or not the distinctness of that entrance meets your standards for what you were intending when you included these. And then secondly, as I noted, that north facing elevation is, we don't permit blank walls at a frontage. So this would be the elevation that would be facing towards the hotel to the north. So we would be wanting to draw your attention to that. Facade void areas, it's not calculated. We simply don't have that information. So that would be another thing to look at, as well as facade openings on that north side. And then finally, there's a requirement that facade greater than 100 feet in width be differentiated so that it appears to be comprised of 2 or more adjacent buildings. Again, this is the north. I'm focusing primarily on the north facade because north elevation, because that's the side that's facing the hotel. That's the more public facing side. So those are really the only sort of design questions that I think the board specifically would want to take a look at. All of the other standards that have been put into place for the PUD are being met, as well as the sort of underlying standards of our zoning ordinance. So I would say that essentially what you're looking at tonight as far as the PUD amendment would be schedule a public hearing to consider whether or not you want to amend the design standards to specifically reference this building as shown or as determined by the board. And then secondly, to amend the site plan to address the modification from a 2,700 square foot pub to a 6,400 square foot cigar bar. I'll note one other piece of material that's been submitted. There is a new parking study that was provided, which indicates that even though the building is growing from 2,700 square feet to 6,400, the parking on the site per this study is still sufficient to accommodate all users.
Was that the study presented or the study that the town agreed is accurate?
So there's a brief description in the report as far as some of the information about that study, but I'll just say that. So with respect to parking, there are 358 parking spaces on site. At the time, I'm just reading this, at the time of the approval of the PUD, the parking study calculated that 350 total shared spaces were required for the development. So there was an excess of 8 spaces. And then specifically for that lot 7 with the pub, 40 parking spaces were required. So 40 parking spaces were included in that overall 350 requirement. The revised study that was provided indicates that there's 52 spaces required for the cigar bar. So it's an increase of 12 spaces. But the study has reduced the number of spaces required for the hotel from 86 to 75 by reclassifying it from a general hotel to a business hotel. And it's reduced the number of spaces required for the proposed restaurant located here on lot 3 from 56 spaces to 32 spaces. So modifying those calculations, the required number of spaces is 364. But there's also an additional analysis being done that looks at peak usage for each one of the different uses. And based on that, because like a hotel is at a certain peak time, it's not as busy during the day. But the peak time of the entire development based on all of the uses is between noon and 2 p.m. And they've determined that only 295 spaces will be required during that period of time. So the 358 spaces that are being provided based on that calculation are adequate.
questions for Tom? Members of preliminary hearing, so. Questions? Right here.
Mr. Chairman, Tom, with 100 pages of documents that you sent us on this, how many have changed from what was originally approved? And it would be helpful, if this isn't my first time, full-time job, to have some idea of all these documents that you sent, what's being modified and being requested as far as the modifications.
Yeah, so that's a good question. Essentially, there's provided as part of the staff report, all of the previously approved standards and site plans, landscaping plans for the development. The only things that have changed on site are the site plan for lot 7. So the boundaries of lot 7 have not changed.
You just eliminated containers.
Correct. Well, there's a 2,700-foot pub that was previously proposed for this site, as well as some containers.
Right.
Those are gone.
The containers are gone.
Correct. And the
Pub is how big?
Pub is gone.
Pub is gone.
Right. So they're being replaced with this cigar bar.
Okay. And we're not calling that a pub. Are they serving liquor?
They are, yes.
Okay, so that would be a bar.
I mean,
Bigger bar. It's a bigger bar.
Okay.
well, it's
So
a
let's
cigar
leave
bar.
with that.
It's a cigar bar.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's focused on cigars, and it's classified in the Indiana state law as a cigar bar.
But they have a liquor license.
Correct. Okay, that's the point.
What changes from the PUD being a cigar bar with all the definitions of the government versus a regular pub?
Well, the key difference is,
Yeah, you can smoke cigars inside.
well, yeah, I mean, a pub is a restaurant and bar. A cigar bar is something that,
So this has no food.
there is food, yes.
It's restaurant, bar, and cigars. That's the only difference is you're adding a cigar.
You
I
can
think-
smoke there.
I mean, in terms of the use, the difference is that there is smoking permitted of cigars only. There are walk-in humidors. There is a private smoking lounge for members only. There are massive ventilation elements to it. And the age is restricted to 21 and over.
Okay.
So there are some significant differences between that and a pub.
Right.
So that's why the use is, now the use, as I said, is not prohibited specifically in the ordinance, nor is it specifically permitted. But there are some implications for the site with respect to the size of the building and the type of use that was previously approved as part of that site plan. So that's why it's coming to you tonight as an amendment to the plan unit development.
I did see in the plan, seems like there's a very small portion that's non-smoking, like, it just, I mean, if I'm looking at it correctly, it just seems like obviously it's a cigar bar, but it does kind of limit the user, like, women typically don't smoke cigars, I'm probably not gonna go there with my friends. I think it's a great building, I would love to see more buildings like this in Munster, I'm really kind of excited about the architecture. But, that's just my comment about the use, if it's, I know we're not discussing whether it's permitted or prohibited, but I just want to understand the non-smoking part of it. Maybe I would go, if there's the portion that I saw on the plan of the non-smoking area was somewhat small.
I would echo Rachel a little bit, is that I'm like, it's a really cool building inside and out, and I want to go too, but I won't because I don't like smoke. So, but I did know, I think it said 11 to 8 was those were the non-smoking hours. Is that what I saw that somewhere? I can't seem to find it now. Is it correct?
Well, that's the issue already come up.
Okay.
Any other questions for staff?
I don't have another question. I just want to say that I think that the facade that we're talking about, that, we're questioning whether there's enough openings. I do think proportionally that's very nice. There is that on that bottom right, there's that large open space, that large piece of glass. I do think that makes up for that portion that looks like mostly concrete. I think for me, that works. I think proportionally, I would approve it. Comfortable. I also think the entrance is fine. I think we can probably all figure out how to get it.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Anything else to present?
I'll just note that the applicant is here and ready to speak.
That being said, I'll open up to the applicant. Mr. Beach, please state your name
Thank
and address for the public record.
Sure. David Beach, 1630 Jerry Watson Drive. And as Tom noted, we were here about 2 years ago, about 1 week short of 2 years ago. We had ordinance 1803 approved, which approved the site plan. To address Commissioner Baker's question, if you look at page 4 of Tom's report, I think that shows you in a nutshell what is the change here. Lot 7 has not changed at all. The footprint of the building has increased from about 2,700 square feet to 3,800 square feet. And then obviously, this is a multi-story building. You'll recall when we were approved 2 years ago, and this is more in the spirit of the ordinance than the terms, but what the council and the commission wanted was local businesses, unique local businesses. And I think we've done that first with our office building, which you can see underway. The Hyatt Place Hotel we have is a local owner and operator. And this is the next building that we're looking to, and you'll hear from the building developers and owners later. But part of what we considered, this is a local fellow who's been running a business in Northwest Indiana that's been successful. He's going to be local. He's going to be here, the kind of person that we want. This is not a chain. This is not something you're going to find in Highland or Sherrill or Dyer. This is going to be unique. And then he came to us with this design, which is, I think, a very unique building, something that you don't find unless you go to Chicago. And this is going to be, we think, a great addition to the development. There are some very unique features to it. One of the questions that was asked was about this facade and why there's not windows there. Well, you have a rooftop that opens. And because of that, you don't have your mechanicals on the top of the building. Those have to be in the interior of the building. But that's all part of this very unique design. To have an opening rooftop building, I think is going to be a really unique addition to Munster. Again, as to our site plan, the lot hasn't changed at all. The building's tipped a little bit and has a little larger footprint. As to the smoking cigars, the council passed ordinance 1855 in February of this year, which allows for a cigar smoking in an establishment, follows the state code. We have that written into line 34 of ordinance 1803, other uses approved by the council. So I think we've addressed that already. I don't want to steal too much of their thunder talking about this unique building, but we're really excited to have them going. This will be the next building in our development. We're trying to keep the timeline that we committed to with the commission. And part of the reason we're doing this now, we want to get this approved so we can get it in the ground this fall. It has to go down state for approval. With the commission's approval, we can send that down to have that approved so we can get it in the ground yet this fall. That's why we're both here today, seeking your approval so we can keep this moving.
Any questions for Mr. Beach?
You have one.
Sure.
So I love the building, and I actually prefer that it's 3 stories to the original 2,700 square foot pub. I think that's much more unique. But my question is, because a couple of the containers did have to be removed from here, and maybe this is a question for Mr. Leeser. I see he's here, but are we still keeping, because I know we had, and I can't recall, was the minimum 10?
Yeah.
And we still are going to be able to do the 10?
On lot 4.
Yes, lot 4, which is in the center, kind of between the restaurant, the office building, and then the south, all of lot 4 is going to be containers. And this was always going to be the primary location for the containers.
I just want to make sure, because that was a really, I mean, we all know that was a really big component, even though it's
Yes.
a smaller component, it's like, it's really, really important to the development. So I just want to make
Yes.
sure that we're not losing that focus a little bit. I think that'll be a good complement to it.
Yeah, those will certainly be there. And as you know, the office building, we've had a limestone carved to replicate that. I mean,
Right.
Everything in here, it will coordinate with those containers. So that is still the central part of the development of lot 4.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Baker.
Mr. Beach, Tom, can you go back to the illustrations? The mechanicals, are they on the west side of the building, those blue ones in that bottom left picture? Where are the mechanicals for all these cool stuff going on? It is a cool building.
I believe that's on the 3rd floor.
Help me with the picture, because I don't know what floor I'm
Sure.
looking at here.
That's something I can probably have the folks who are here to have the actual building approved address. I don't want to.
Okay.
We have the architect and the owner and their attorney are here as well.
So just from the standpoint of ready for the next meeting is where the mechanicals are, how those are, shielded, and, the actual development or the site itself hasn't changed, just the building has changed. So the parking's sufficient, Tom, correct? As it relates to what this new use is versus the old use?
That's what the study says.
The study says.
What's the town say?
It appears based on the study that it is adequate, yes.
Based on those hours.
Right, and
Correct.
the study,
Is this open for lunch too, Mr. Beach?
I believe the answer is yes. And you'll see in that study that was done, we had another parking study commission. They,
Is that Ciorba?
yes, Sierra using the manual projects that our high usage will be noon to 2 p.m.
Just for this site?
No, for the entire campus.
Thank you.
And they're projecting that we would have 295 cars with 358 spots. What we know from working with Karma and the owners, their primary usage would be from 5 to 10 p.m. The Sierra study projects they would have 100% occupancy from noon to 2. So our belief is that it actually overstates the number of cars that will be there from noon to 2, but that's what the manual says, and that's how the study is reported.
What time does business usually close during the weekend and weeknights?
I think it's 11.
11. I have one more question, and maybe Mr. Lees, you can answer this. Jay, when we started talking about this, we talked about having families to be able to come here. Now we changed it from a pub where I can't come after sports games and stuff like that. Now I'm gonna come here as adults. What are we doing to keep this as a whole community development in the grand scheme?
So, well, yeah, we still have the primary restaurant in the front,
Okay.
which is going to be, a much larger footprint. And right at the front here, we have on lot 5, obviously, we have School of Rock coming in, which is almost all teenage kids and younger. So this will all still be family friendly. The pub, it could have been a family friendly place, but built as a pub, we don't see this as a significant change in usage. It's just a much more unique building than we had.
Oh, it's a great design. It's a wonderful design. I was just my curiosity was trying to keep the whole town of Munster be able to use this development as a whole, because we have a big hotel, we have a big office space. Now we want to drag the community in there and get the most use as we can as a whole town.
Yep. And I think that, the stuff that's to the front of the property and
And the
more
containers.
business, yeah, that will all be family friendly.
Any other questions? That being said, this is a preliminary hearing. I'm looking for a motion from the commission.
I make a motion to set PC docket number 22-013, zoning amendment, land unit development, and make believe crossing for public hearing.
I second the motion.
We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Now I'll do a voice call. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Please work with staff regarding all the notifications for this public hearing. The next item on the agenda is public hearings. We have PC docket number 22007, Paul Katz on behalf of the Munster Church, requesting a developmental plan to permit the construction of an addition to the Munster Church, the construction of a new multi-purpose accessory building, and associated site modifications at 214 Ridge Road. Now I'll turn this over to you. for the staff report.
Okay, this is actually a continued public hearing. The applicant presented the petition last month at a public hearing. They are seeking to demolish 3 buildings on their site at 214 Ridge Road and to construct a 13,350 square foot addition with a new 7,140 square foot multi-purpose accessory building. Property is located at, as I said, 214 Ridge Road, the corner of Holman Avenue and Ridge Road. In addition to the new buildings and removed buildings, they plan to narrow the existing Ridge Road driveway, improve the landscaping along the Ridge Road frontage, add and relocate parking lot light fixtures, add parking lot light landscaping, and install a stormwater detention pond at the southeast corner of the property. As I said, this was presented at a public hearing last month. At the public hearing, there was one person who spoke the project. Specifically, the request was that the parking area on the east side be screened from the residential properties to the south. In response to that comment, the applicant has amended the plans to show a 6-foot vinyl fence proposed in that location. There was also a question from a member of the Plan Commission about the location of a dumpster enclosure, which was not shown on the plans as submitted last month. That has been added into the plans and is now being shown at the southeast corner of the property near that detention pond. And then finally, a revised landscaping plan was submitted that includes an additional 5 shade trees along the Ridge Road frontage. As we've already discussed, this property is located in the civic zone and is subject to the developmental standards of that zone. They applied for and received a number of variances earlier this evening from lighting, landscaping, some of the architectural standards, and some of the sort of frontage requirements. Those are all shown in the chart within the staff report. And I'll just note that between the plans as presented and the variances that were approved, the project does comply with our zoning standards for the civic zone at this point. So yeah, the request tonight would be to, approve the development plan as submitted. That would include site plan, the architectural renderings, the landscaping improvements, and modifications to the parking lot. And in the report, there was a condition. I had recommended approval based on the final review and approval of engineering plans by the Munster Town Engineer and approval of the variances submitted to the Munster Board of Zoning Appeals under BZA docket number 22-006. That condition has been met this evening, so that's no longer necessary. But given that they do meet all of our standards, I would recommend approval.
Thank you, Tom. Any questions for Tom? That being said, is someone here to speak on behalf of the petitioner? Name and address for the public record.
Good evening, Ted Brown, Rowe Associates Architects, 13177 Road Street, Cedar Lake, Indiana. Mr. Raffin, I think I'm going to try to keep this more brief every time I talk. I am joined by Pastor Jim Holland, the donor, Paul Katz representing the church, and Don Turinga and Fred Cruzwick's here, who's our landscape designer. I think Tom summed it up. We're looking for approval. We have plans down at the state for the first building. They want to just start construction as soon as we can get state approval and your approval, and that's what we're here for tonight.
Any questions for the petitioner regarding this project?
Yes, sir. I have a question with regards, I asked a question last time you were here about the access points off of Holman. There's 2 curb cuts. There's one on the south end and one in the middle. Is that correct?
That's correct.
All right, those are staying.
That is correct.
And then you have the third one on, which is a single curb cut on Ridge Road.
Yes.
Which one gets the most volume?
I would let the church.
Probably the Holman Avenue more.
There's 2.
The middle one on Holman Avenue.
The first one,
Yes,
closest to Ridge Road.
yes.
And then is that also for ingress and egress or just ingress? Both.
Both.
Thank you. Just as a comment, I'm still concerned as we relate to the number of curb cuts on Ridge Road and the church with the volume of parking being along home and having a curb cut on Ridge Road. And it would be beneficial for the long-term flow, in my opinion, of Ridge Road if they reconsider the fact that that need for that, once that train station hits in, there's going to be significant amount of volume on Ridge Road, and a full interchange there for this particular site is going to create some concerns. My point. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Baker. Tom, when the streetscape plan gets going, and I don't remember what it looks like, does it go all the way to Holman Avenue? Or are we going to restrict the lanes to 1 lane each direction and center turn lane? Does it go to state line and meet up with Lansing?
Yeah, it ends up widening back out, and I believe, and it's a good question, I'm not sure if at this location. No, yeah, at this location, it would be narrowed down to a single lane in either direction with a center turn lane. And then there would be on-street parking provided on the north side of Ridge Road. So in front of this, if you can imagine where this is, across the street is Shoop's and the barber shop, candy store. So all of those buildings that are those 1-story buildings that are right up against the right of way, there would be on-street parking in front of those. And then on the south side, the idea would be to use that extra lane area for a wider parkway, because right now in that section, there's no parkway.
So in the future, that curb cut could possibly be narrower right in town if we want to the streetscape, as long as you have access coming in. It doesn't have to be 80 feet wide.
Well, right now it is extremely wide.
Right.
Excuse me. They are proposing to narrow it to 24 feet, which would be the town's maximum width for a 2-way curb cut in the commercial district. So while I think in an ideal situation, the curb cut would be removed altogether, the fact that they're narrowing it is, I think, beneficial for the overall streetscape.
And that rectory building is coming down, correct?
Yes.
So
buildings are coming
again,
down.
you have another jogged, lanes again, just like we do at, over by the Speedway with regards to, what's that one coming up next to Shoop's? What's that street? That runs into the
Meadow Lane.
rectory.
That's Meadow Lane.
Yeah. It just makes for a dangerous scenario that close to the light at home. And if the rectory is coming down and getting rebuilt, has been any consideration in maybe moving it over and having your lane kind of aligned with the street to the north?
You're talking about the street by the other development?
No, the street north of Ridge Road.
Oh, no, I didn't know, since you have a road right here anyways. That's the other development right there. Yeah, the same.
No, I'm talking about this.
Kind of tie into Meadow Lane.
Yeah, so having to be, at least to the point where if you're coming there, you're not jogging with, now you have multiple challenges.
The new building's going in front of Meadow. There's the addition right there.
It's attached to the existing, the right.
Right, see the new addition? There's
Attached.
Yeah, there's a new addition right there. So you can't get the road.
And so what we did is we That access point, as Tom mentioned, we narrowed that down. It's really wide right now.
Yes, it is.
We made it safer. We've narrowed it down to the 24-foot. And it is essential to have access to that east lot. If you enter, to get to that east lot, there is a lane on the north side of the cemetery and the south side of the cemetery, but it's one-way access. And I would think even for emergency vehicles, it would be good to have access all the way around the building. So the church, needs to keep that access off of.
What about right in, right out?
That's something maybe Don Turingen can speak of, but right in and right out, sometimes in scenarios like this can be more dangerous. If you've
The
ever,
whole thing is dangerous, in my opinion, sir.
Why can't it just be used to be right out? So when service is over with, you don't need exit off of Bridge Road. You can't come in.
Because they're gonna have weddings and other, events there, I would assume too,
You
so
have
it's
a
not
release
just Sunday
valve
morning.
You have a release valve onto Bridge Road if you need it, but most people are gonna be getting in and out of here off the home, that'll make it a little more safer.
I guess we see this as any other business. We're not a business, but we have a large amount of cars one day a week and another day. Where access, a two-way access from Ridge would be no different than what you see, anywhere along that roadway.
I can't speak to what you'll have at evenings, but at most, houses of worship have some evening events as well as trying to lease out the large room for other events.
True. They can speak to that, but I would think, they'll use it other than Sundays. Yes, there will be other events. We just know that we currently have that access road, and has there been any issues that you know of? Safety issues? Paul, you've been there forever, right?
No, I've never heard of anything, never accident.
So we just feel like we want to keep what's already there, but we've narrowed it down to meet town standards. It will relieve some of the traffic at the intersection too, because now all the cars are forced to go down home, and especially if they're eastbound, it could create longer lines at the intersection of home and Ridge.
Any other questions for petitioner? Thank you. Since this is a continued public hearing, I'll open it up to the public. Is anyone here to speak on behalf of the public? If so, come up to the podium and state your name and address for the record. Tom, I don't see anyone online. Do you? So far away from me.
No.
All right, I'll give you going once, going twice. I'll close the public hearing and bring it back to the commission. We have motion, thoughts, questions, concerns?
I'll just note one thing that was stated at the preliminary hearing, which wasn't stated tonight, with respect to the circulation of the parking lot. It was noted that these drive aisles between the two parking lots are not they're substandard drive aisles.
They're narrow, very narrow.
Right, and so the circulation between the two parking lots is very restricted, which was one of the reasons why the applicant stated that it was important to retain that Ridge Road curb cut, because it's very difficult to navigate from Holman Avenue into that east parking lot, and especially if it's busy. And I'll just point out that having relocated the main entrance of the building now to this area, I would anticipate that you'll have a lot of people gathering after services out here in front of this entrance, and having that double as the main access point between the two parking lots, I think could be problematic. They're further restricted by adjusting those drive aisles by the fact that that lot in the center of those parking lots is a cemetery. So they're somewhat hunted by the.
Yes.
So the area you're talking about right now where it's very narrow, is that, so are they allowed, are they still allowed cars to go through there? It's narrow?
It's a one-way. I was there
Which
today.
way?
I forget, one goes one way, one goes the other way. I was there today driving around, and there's sufficient access to
There
get.
is?
I mean, well, it's narrow one way. I was there maybe 3:30, 4 o'clock. Ridge Road was pretty quiet, so I didn't see a lot of traffic going around stuff, and it wasn't super busy at this part going towards Lansing. But I saw they had the signs for one way going around the cemetery and stuff like that, but if I was going to church, honestly, I'd want to probably, I was parking this lot, I'd probably want to head out if I was going that way. One thing I thought of is, the streetscape plan. I know you guys took the steps out and stuff, but I just remember getting married myself and I parked the limo right in front. I walked up the stairs to the steps and all that kind of stuff. And you might have parking in front of this later on with the streetscape plan. So you might want to look at putting a sidewalk later on that would connect you back to the front of church, because you might be end up bringing people out.
Sounds to me you park illegally.
So,
So the front entrance is on the south side of the building, right? So the two big parking lot islands are right where everybody will congregate after service, correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
So when everybody's leaving and still congregating, that's the point you're making, Tom, as far as having some concerns on the safety aspect of it. I mean, we can paint in front so, people know, but people are gonna do what they do.
Well, I think
And
when
it's church.
I think what Tom was maybe alluding to is if you had more cars going through those lanes, it would make it even a busier area if you shut off the access to Ridge Road. So they have their flow of traffic, cars coming in and out, they have no problems now. The one-way lanes do function to connect them, but you wouldn't want to have that as your only access to that east parking lot.
I've never heard any concern of traffic. You lived over there. My brother lived over there. I've never heard of any problems with traffic in that area of the church.
And then Tom, one of the folks that spoke last time this came up was talking about some of the drainage issues. Is staff been comfortable with those resolutions, or have they been resolved?
Yeah, the remonstrant is a resident of one of these lots down here to the south of the parking lot. And the question was, how can they improve the lot to prevent the flow of water off the south edge of that parking lot into that sort of, not really a swale, but it drops pretty significantly from the parking lot to those residential lots. And the plans are now showing a concrete curb to kind of channel that water to the west.
Mr. Train gave us assurances that the BZA meeting that the water will drain and not impact neighbor lots.
And it's an asphalt curb now, which is being replaced by concrete, so the snow plows.
And then we're holding the fence up at the elevation that's higher.
So we call Mr. Turing if there's a problem?
You know where his office is.
Always.
My number's not less than.
We know where to find it.
Any other questions, comments, concerns? That being said, I'm looking for a motion or some kind of direction from the commission.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to approve PC docket 22-007, approving a development plan to permit the construction of an addition to the Munster Church, the construction of a new multi-purpose accessory building and associated site modifications at 214 Ridge Road, with the condition that final review and approval of engineering plans by the Munster Town Engineer.
Second, we have a motion and second. Do we have any other discussion? That being said, Tom, I'll have you call a voice call. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you. On behalf of the church, we greatly appreciate you standing with them.
So welcome and thank you.
Can I just say one thing? Thank you for what you do for all the businesses along the road, because every time I pass, I notice you are saying, visit Sweet Tooth, take your father to Shoop's. dine at our new restaurant. I just think that's really nice because all these small businesses, advertising is expensive, and it's nice that you're supporting your neighboring businesses. Appreciate that.
Be a beautiful addition to town. Thank you. The next item under public hearing is PC docket number 22008, Spin Munster LLC, represented by Gary Wolfel, requesting approval of preliminary plat for the 10 Mara addition of the town of Munster, a commercial subdivision located at southwest corner of Timber Drive, Man Drive, Fisher Street, formerly the Lansing Country Club. Tom, I'll turn it over to you for a staff report.
Okay, similar to the last agenda item, this is a continued public hearing. This was presented in a preliminary hearing 2 months ago and then at a public hearing last month. The petition is to subdivide the former Lansing Country Club into into 7 development lots, 2 small outlots, and then a block that's been reserved for a subsequent phase of the development. There was a lot of discussion about the overall development plan at the last meeting. I won't go into that, but the applicant is prepared with a more detailed presentation. I'll note a couple things about just the plat itself. As we discussed at the previous meeting, the plat does comply with all of our subdivision standards. There were a couple exceptions that we had pointed out in the meeting, and some revisions have been made to the plat as shown here, which is different from what was presented last month. Specifically, and these should sound familiar, property line corners are shown to be bounded by an arc of at least 20 feet in radius, so that's been addressed. And then the overall right-of-way for the roads shown in the development has been modified to 76 feet wide, which corresponds with our thoroughfare standards. In addition to those items that were identified, they are still seeking waivers from the section 26-35B for a right-of-way for a major access or business street of less than 100 feet, and from section 26-313B, which requires that lots be no deeper than 300 feet. And because of that, our recommendation is still to approve, but the conditions have been modified a little bit. So we're still requesting that all necessary easements, agreements, and approvals, both by the town and third parties, to be made and approved for the completions of phase 1 and phase 1A and phase 1B, as shown on the development plans. And a utility easement be provided along the east edge of lot 9, and then all stormwater and engineering plans be subject to a final review by the town engineer. Again, this is the overall plat that's being submitted here for approval tonight. I'm going to just switch to this PDF that was provided by the applicants. Make sure that's being shared on the screen. So again, there were a lot of questions about the overall development plan at the last meeting and applicant. The documentation is all the same that was submitted last month, but he's organized it into maybe a more cohesive presentation that he'd like to present to you tonight. So the applicant is Gary Warfeld, Saxon Partners.
You know the routine, Gary. Name, address, and sign it in the sheet.
I've been here before. Gary Warfeld, Saxon Partners, 25 Recreation Park Drive, Hingham, Massachusetts, 02043. Thank you, Commissioners, for the time this evening. Based on what we presented last month, I thought it might make some sense to just take 10 minutes and talk about the phasing versus the subdivision. And it's a little counterintuitive, but we're asking for a subdivision of a phase 2, phase 3 prior to phase 1 1A and 1B. So I'd like to explain that. This is just the overall picture that shows the Lansing Country Club, 149 acres split between Illinois and Indiana. The only portion that we are developing is the 59 acres in the southeast quadrant, which is the subject site. There's only two parcels in Indiana, the one that the 59 acres we're talking about, and then the one to the north, which contains a lake, that's about 22 acres, lake and trails. We intend to keep that clearly open space. And we intend to open up the view corridors along the Betsy Green line. Tom, give the next slide, please. Phase 1A and 1B is all off-site work. And the reason that this is critical, obviously, is the 59-acre parcel is essentially an island with no access. Originally, Fisher Street does have a right-of-way that extended into the property. That was changed when the subdivision to the north was put in. And then that was really it. So phase 1A is an extension of Fisher Street that comes past Manor and it drops down into the property at the north, as you see there. And phase 1B is an extension of Maple Leaf Boulevard from Maple Leaf Crossing, which comes up the old railway line and crosses over into the south end of the property just north of the NIPSCO substation. Part of that Maple Leaf Crossing roadway will include a signal at Maple Leaf Boulevard and Calumet, so this becomes a natural access way into the site. So phase 1, if you go ahead, this is the detailed engineering for phase 1A. We don't have to spend a lot of time on this, just we talked about this at length. The challenges here for both 1A and 1B, we're crossing some pretty heavy utility infrastructure with NIPSCO. We have spent about a year working with NIPSCO on this. We do have a letter of intent. We're seeing eye to eye. We're ready to prepare all of our right-of-way agreements with NIPSCO at this point. Go ahead one more time. It's just engineering drawing of what Maple Leaf Boulevard looks like. Again, we're crossing NIPSCO property north of the Munster substation, which is again some heavy utility access. And we also go under the elevated NICD rail line right at that point. So we have all the agreements in principle done with NICD, and we're working very closely with their contractors. They've actually started work down along our site just last week. Next slide, Tom. I'm only spend a second on this. I'm going to go because this has been in our development plan, and I think this created a little confusion last month. So I'm going to just that's our phase development plan, right? 1A and 1B offsite, and then phase 2 and phase 3 are on-site. This was only done for illustrative purposes to show what the density might look like. In this current form, this represents about 70% of the allowable density in the CD4B zone. We don't intend on beginning with phase 2, with phase 3. Phase 2 is what we're really focusing on right now. So if you go fast forward to the next slide, this is probably a little cleaner way to look at the phasing and the subdivision plan. This is, I think, where we had a little confusion last month. Phase 2 and phase 3 are both within the property. We're just calling phase 3 at this point a separate lot, which is 21 acres. We're only looking to get phase 2, the roadways laid out, because we have to start with that and work from the inside out. So before we start nailing down phase 1A and 1B with NIPSCO, and with all these legal agreements and all the utility crossings, we need to marry it up with a subdivision plan. So this is the reason why we're looking at phase 2, kind of starting at the middle and then working our way out. Next slide. This is an illustrative of what phase 1A looks like. Excuse me, phase 2. 1A is your access to the north, 1B access to the south. Phase 2 in its current plan would be 300,000 square feet of commercial. We drew the line between phase 2 and phase 3, as I mentioned last month, because phase 2 does not trigger signalized improvements at Calumet and Fisher. If we exceed 300,000 feet of density, we start seeing some failure in that intersection. And I think we'd have to look at addressing traffic overall, which I think we should probably do anyway, since we talked last time.
Gary, is your intention to do phase 1, get the roads done, get phase 2 100% completed before you move on to phase 3? Is that?
Absolutely correct, yes, yes.
So your buildings will be all done in phase 2, the roads will be in phase 1, before you even think about phase 3?
Exactly. Phase 3, we're not even sure what the highest and best use is right now. We've been approached by some other developers we've worked with in the past to do townhouse residential. I'm looking at a residential development in Arlington Heights tomorrow, which is townhouse and commercial combined. So real interesting to see how that works, because that seems to be a new trend in commercial development, townhouse. And all this is basically scaled for walkability, bikeability. Next slide, Tom. I want to talk a little bit. Well, that's just another subdivision. We can move past that. This is what currently the greenway system looks like from the corner of close to Manor, Timmerick, and Fisher, going northwest up into Lansing, and then directly east through the Indiana Trail system. You can see our roadway connectors there. If you just look at those two and you look at the green space that we're going to have on our site, the green space that's at Centennial Park, the active development at Maple Leaf Crossing, if you just fast forward to the next slide, Tom, you'll see what the new greenway system looks like. We're going to, there'll be more than triple the greenway connectivity in this development than exists today. So we intend to link our development not only as it exists now to the northwest up into the Chicago system and to the Lansing downtown area, but southeast all the way to Centennial Village, Centennial Park, through Maple Leaf Crossing. We can also connect, and there's been several meetings already to connect the western trails to the Cook County Forest Preserve District. You know, one thing we've talked about traffic, but we never really talked too much about the future of cities and towns with their walkable and bikeable infrastructure. This will be designed to take cars off the road. We haven't, it's a hard thing to quantify, but the idea here is to make Munster a more walkable, bikeable town and connect these nodes of businesses, healthcare, office, residential, and really make this a town that has better accessibility. When we talked last week, there was some public discussion, a little bit of opposition in terms of what that Manor and Timmerick intersection looked like. I'm calling this Evergreen Park 3.0 because we've looked at this several times. This actually came out of the Parks and Rec department. They asked if we could think about reworking Timmerick and Manor, something like this. We took it back to our traffic engineers. They had a little heartburn with it because it wasn't really in line with typical standards for intersection control. But we looked at it harder. We redesigned it. We talked about slowing traffic down. If we take Manor coming from the north and we wind it down into the intersection of Timmerick, there'll be 2 stops there before you hit Fisher. So there's a chance to slow traffic down twice. Same thing with Timmerick. As Timmerick comes in and it winds down to Fisher, 2 stop signs. So it also eliminates, there was a comment last week about possible headlights into neighbors' homes. This, I think, accomplishes traffic calming, gets rid of the problem with lights at night. It also actually increases the size of the green space for Evergreen Park. So I don't really expect any action on this, but this, I just wanted to present this for just for clarification, because I think we are gonna try to move in this direction. But again, this is offsite work. After we have the subdivision plat approved, our intention would then be to complete all the engineering for Fisher Street Extension, Maple Leaf Boulevard, and have that all submitted as a plat to the commission for approval at a later date. So this is our last slide. This is just what we're asking for approval on today is the preliminary subdivision plat as you see it.
Any questions for the petitioner, for the commission? I'm sure there has to be a few.
Mr. Chairman, yes. Thank you. That helps a lot as far as the clarifications, as far as what you're trying to accomplish. I think looks outstanding. Mr. Vanderwood or Mr. Wickland, I have a question with regards to this body's responsibility for some of what Mr. Ward will call is off-site work, i.e. the roadways that are ingress and egress and timber. Do we see that as a part of the development plan, or is that outside of the scope of this board? Since it's not part of this project.
Yeah, so with respect to Evergreen Park and that reconfiguration, that would also have to be platted, so that would come back to the Plan Commission for approval. So you would be able to approve sort of the final layout of the roads and the lots. Because it's taking a road through, splitting lots up, combining and consolidating different lots. So you would review that, yes. With the right of way along Maple Leaf Boulevard, it's essentially following an existing right of way.
It's not a city road though, is it?
It's town-owned right of way, it's former railroad right of way.
Yeah.
So that improvement would take place. But yeah, we definitely would take it over, but I'm just wondering whether or not that would go through the plating process. My hunch is that it would, because again, you're kind of going through some other lots, and so you have to kind of replat some things. So yeah, I believe that would come back. Another thing to keep in mind is, kind of talked about this a little bit at the last meeting, there are still a number of approvals that need to take place. So approval of this preliminary plat, again, we're recommending that it be made conditioned upon some of these other things taking place. So there's easements that need to be acquired, both from the town and from NIPSCO. There's a development agreement that has been proposed that has not been signed. So there are additional sort of redevelopment agreements that need to be approved. There's a lot of different things that still need to take place. And so this is, like I said, the first step of many steps that will be presented to the Plan Commission for approval and review. So it's not the only time you get to review and look at what's going on in this lot. So just bear that in mind as you think about your decision. And then the second thing I'll just point out is that although we do have a full development plan for the entire site, you're not necessarily putting that phase 3 set in stone, right? That's just an example, as Gary said, of how the remainder of the lots could be developed. And it will be developed according to that plan, but if the plan changes, it'll come back. And again, as we're talking about some of these traffic impacts, when that phase 3 is returned to this board for approval, you'll have another opportunity to take a look at the traffic situation and make a determination as to whether or not everything is happening the way it was supposed to happen, or if certain changes need to be made.
For example, if we can request other access or something happens and you need a connection to 45th Street or something, and you look at that at phase 3, if the traffic is so heavy on Fisher and Maple Leaf Crossing, there might be another access point that might have to be made.
I mean, the 45th Street connection has been discussed, and
I'm just going out there.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm just saying, just because if there's a lot of traffic, because you're bringing everything right to Fisher and Maple Leaf Crossing. And I think Mr. Baker and I had some discussion about this in length. I don't know if the town of Munster and all our traffic studies actually look at the amount of traffic from the Mormon all the way to Main Street. I don't know if we take that in conclusively, because coming home from the city every day, everyone from Indiana is getting off in Calumet Avenue because you can't travel down the Foreman. I don't even use Calumet Avenue anymore. I go down Torrance Avenue after the south part of town because it is so heavy going around the Foreman at night.
But they'll just blame that on the construction.
But that's been a while.
And it's on
before
every year.
construction season.
I will point out that the traffic study that was presented and included in this report does look at where the traffic is coming from during the morning peak and where it's going to during the evening peak hours. And there is an impact to Calumet Avenue, but the vast majority, I believe it's, I don't want to say a number because I don't have it right in hand, but the vast majority of the traffic is exiting from Fisher northbound on Calumet Avenue. So there's a very small impact to the southbound traffic on Calumet Avenue from this development, and in particular, just from this phase 2.
Unless they go to Maple Leaf Crossing.
Yeah, I mean, there is.
Not that they would go that way to go left, but who knows, maybe they want to stop and get a coffee or, have a cigar.
I mean,
There
will-
then you go far.
Right, there will be an impact. What I'm saying is, I'm not suggesting that there's going to be no impact to southbound traffic, but this traffic study shows that the majority of the traffic is heading north.
Here's my other question. Now, we put a trigger in there, and obviously these traffic studies are studies, right? They're theoretical in issuance, You put a trigger in there, and then we come back and a year down, and you have 200,000 square feet of building, and we realize that Fisher just isn't working, or something's not working. Is there a trigger that allows the town to be able to say, it's time, we gotta improve this road before we hit that 350,000 square foot trigger? Because you might hit it sooner. We don't know 100% how many square feet, how much impact you're gonna have. I mean, we have a study, but it's a study, and traffic isn't always based perfectly on a study. But is there an item that gives the town some power that says, Fisher Street's busy? We got the high school there, the hospital there. We need to improve that earlier. Is there a safeguarding to protect residents to be able to trigger that earlier than just the square footage number on development?
Well, the square footage number is tied to a projection of traffic volumes. And I think similar to what was done with the Community Foundation subdivision that was recently approved, there was 3 triggers that were put into place, and whichever was hit first, that would require the installation of the traffic signal. So I would imagine that if it was the desire of the Plan Commission to say, if the development has generated this number of vehicles earlier than shown, earlier than what was projected in the study, that could be the trigger rather than just simply
Square footage, right? And it doesn't do your development any good if you can't get it out of the place either. So,
Can I take a shot at that
Sure.
question? Because one of two things are going to happen here. One, we start picking off 20,000 foot, 30,000 foot, 40,000 foot tenants, and we'll come back and we're going to do one lot at a time, right? Which is probably going to be the way that this thing's going to happen. So we're just automatically going to grow into this issue, and we're going to start here. I mean, if we get 3 of these buildings up, we have a problem. I don't think you're going to allow the 4th to go up. So that's a trigger. The other one, which is a scenario I like, is that we get a 300,000 foot user and we get this thing done all at once. There are some larger corporate relocation tenants out there that could happen. If that happens, I'm sure we're going to have a very long, detailed conversation about traffic at that point, because I don't think anybody in this room is going to want to approve that size of a development that quickly unless we know that it's going to work from a traffic standpoint. And we will, I think it would be a good idea to get a lot of the area developers together. We'd be willing to participate in understanding this traffic, because it's not just us. I mean, if Jay is successful and we're successful and Matt's successful, the town's gonna look a lot different than it looks today. And if it's done right, it's gonna be really good for all of us. But we have to do it right.
great.
One other point I wanted to make. When we talk about platting these roadways, both NIPSCO and Pepsi have agreed to convey all the underlying land where our roadways are to the town. So all of the roadway work will be done in town of Munster right away. And that's what we contemplated in the development agreement.
How close is the town to completing the development agreement?
Great question. I don't think we're very close. I'm not really been in much discussion about it, but I know there's been just a preliminary review. I don't have a projected date as far as when that'll be executed. I think it's still very much early.
How long do these things normally take?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, each project has been unique. I don't know. Yeah, maybe you know how
Jay,
long
how
it
long-
took
I was gonna
to
say
make
2 years. Yeah. I don't, pass out.
Wrong answer.
No, I'm just looking at Jay. That one took an awful long
That
time.
was a different set.
It was, there isn't a set time. It just, once we can get, I haven't seen anything yet. First,
Yeah, I mean,
council hasn't seen anything. As far as I know, maybe someone on the council has, I have not. But as you get closer and closer to what's gonna work for both parties, so it's just a matter of when the gap closes,
yeah, I mean,
assume.
I would imagine that this I think represents a pretty significant step forward and an indication that the plan commission and town council members who are on the plan commission, are sort of endorsing the project and hoping that it moves forward. So I would think that this would add a little bit of, I don't know if I would say urgency, but it would definitely help to kind of push the development agreement forward. That's just my guess. I'm not the person who works on this. That would be the town manager and the town attorney.
But to that point, we wouldn't be seeing buildings coming back to us for approval until we have that development agreement. Right? I mean, that really can't, there wouldn't be any sense in having that work done, right?
Well, I would say that I would imagine that until the access points are part of that development agreement, and the financing of those access points are part of the development agreement. So until those are finalized, and public improvements are made, there's no final plat approval, and without final plat approval, there's no buildings being constructed.
We have plenty of work to do in parallel with the development agreement. I mean, that's not, the development agreement is critical. It's not a critical path right now. The critical path is subdivision plat preliminary approved. So then we can go back to NIPD, NIPSCO, and Pepsi and nail down all these access agreements. There's as you can imagine, with NIPSCO, we have several conditions that we have to meet. We can meet them all, but it's going to take some time.
I understand.
And the other thing we want to do, we want to be careful with time, because when we do that Fisher Street extension, we would like to be doing it in parallel with the grade crossing, NICD grade crossing. So when that part of town gets torn up, it gets torn up once. And I would say the same thing for Maple Leaf. Once we clear Maple Leaf Crossing, that's fine. That's not the problem. The problem is going to be coordinating that work with the NICD underpass. That is a major project. And so we want to be in sync with that. We've already given the NICD access agreements to our property. They've taken our fence down, and they're starting to relocate town utilities.
Any other questions for the petitioner? That being said, this is a public hearing, so I will open it up to the public. Is there anyone here that would like to speak on behalf of this petition, either in the room or online?
Yes, Chairman Raffin.
Hold on 1 second.
Hello, can you hear me?
Please, if you're online, please state your name and address for the record, please.
Sure, yes. My name's Chris Elo, 46 Timrick Drive. Just had a question for Gary. On phase 3, how many homes in your study did you potentially have there?
The original layout that came back, and they looked very hard at CD 4B zoning. I thought it was a little on the dense side, but they said that they could meet zoning and the maximum would be, I think it was 282.
282 homes. And then at this
And
point, then
that's
you're,
not homes, that's not homes, that's townhomes. Small lot townhomes,
townhomes. Okay.
which you're seeing built in Ground Point, Maryville, and everywhere else these days. It's more of it's a housing type, typically with 6 adjacent townhomes with shared party walls, small lots, garages, small yards.
And for potential like residents there, you're saying that the only entrance and exits would be Fisher and Maple Leaf? Are you at all considering anything going to Illinois?
Well, I
To
think that's what
Wentworth?
we just, what's Rolla just had talked about. I mean, once we bring in phase 3 into this conversation, I think we're going to have to take a much deeper dive into traffic. Because right now, without doing anything to the intersections at Fisher and Calumet, we can handle 300,000 in commercial. So that's phase 2. If we add phase 3 to that, there's going to have to be some additional traffic adjustments.
Okay. And then also just, okay, yeah. And just for the record, I would, looking at the redesign of Tick and Manor, I actually prefer the first drawings because I think there, Timmerick at least dead ends. Now at this point, it would become a fair, just a pass through again. So again, just a little bias on my part because I live on Timmerick, but just another thought.
Thank you for your input.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else that would like to speak, whether online or step on up, state your name and address for the public record, and please sign it.
Barbara Whitaker, 1921 Alta Vista, Munster. Okay, I only started getting interested in this project lately, so much has gone on, and I understand that. And because I was curious about that property. And I'm encouraged to hear that phase 3 might be some kind of a residential thing, hopefully for something for seniors, because I think seniors are really neglected in this town. We wouldn't need schools, we contribute to schools, we don't use schools. So that's a little bit encouraging to me tonight. Okay, so my other thing is, these are 2 little sort of off the subject, kind of off the subject. Kenmar, how did you arrive at that name of that development? Yes.
That's right.
I'm not sure how to answer this question, but
We answered it once before.
yeah, we just made it up basically.
Oh, that's good. That's fine. Doesn't mean anything wild. Okay, and what was the other thing? I don't know, maybe this has gone on in Munster and I never noticed it, but in my professional career, whenever we wanted to do something, we had to have a needs assessment. I've never heard Munster put out a needs assessment. Like, this sounds beautiful, the cigar bar, but do we need a cigar bar? Did somebody, how do you get to what you want? Do the developers come to you when you put this land out? Or does Munster go to the developers and say, hey, our residents, because we put out a survey, are looking for this or that? Have you done needs assessments in Munster over the years that I've used?
Well, I think we did comprehensive plans and
What?
stuff. We've done comprehensive plans in town and had directions on how we wanted the business districts to
Okay.
look and all that stuff.
Did you?
We don't control the land.
You
so the developer-
solicited community, the residents.
And plan commission meetings are always, and town council meetings are always open to the public. And we
Yeah,
want to get
but,
input from
You know,
people.
is there a broad survey that goes out? And things like that. That's, I think, a need, anyway, that's all. And
One good
other-
thing about social media, you hear everything nowadays on wants and needs and all
Well,
that stuff.
Maybe we don't like social media.
That's Mr. Mayor, he's a senior too, he gets that.
Hey. And one other thing, what's happening with the view? That's the thing that bugs me. At Centennial Park, that building, the restaurant.
I think that's more of a council. This
I
is-
know that is, that's
Right.
not yours,
Yeah.
but be careful of jumping into stuff because that's a horrible, boondoggle. Okay,
Well, thank you so much for your time. Tom, do you want to add something?
I just wanted to let the Ms. Whitaker know that the town is kicking off a comprehensive plan this August. So there will be a number of opportunities where the residents and business owners can come in and do exactly what you're suggesting, which is say, hey, these are the things that we want to see in town, these are the things that we don't want to see. And all that information that we gather from the public, from the residents will be put into this comprehensive plan. Comprehensive plan itself will be fairly generalized. I mean, I don't think it'll get down into the specific uses such as cigar bar versus pub. But that document is then used in a number of ways. One, it is used to go out and seek redevelopment partners. So the redevelopment projects that have taken place throughout town, Centennial Village, Maple Leaf Crossing, Munster Shops, Lake Business Center, those have all kind of come out of some of those planning activities. And then secondly, it's also used to update our codes and standards. So, you know, if there are particular uses that are not desirable or something like that, then that would be amended into our zoning ordinance.
and when is that plan going to be?
We're kicking it off in August. So in about a month, we'll start our meetings with the steering committee and the policymakers. And then in this fall, I believe we'll start having our public meetings. So there'll be in-person meetings. There'll also be a website and some online engagement opportunities.
Thank you, Tom, for sharing that information.
Mr. Chairman.
Tom, I had to phone in. Am I able to make a comment?
Yes, please state your name and address for the public record.
Great. Michael Gephardt, 10380 Oxford Place, Munster, Indiana. Greetings from Texas tonight. I think I mentioned this last time that this came before the committee, but you know, we've spent a lot of money on an underpass that was supposed to alleviate traffic on Calumet, and here we are. You know, looks like we're adding quite a bit of traffic back onto Calumet after spending, you know, those millions of dollars to try to alleviate that. I know that when this a while back came before the committee, that it was not received very well to open up a entry exit to Illinois side on Wentworth. It seemed like people were not comfortable with that. As a South Side of Munster resident, you know, Wentworth is not a secret to us at all. Like, it's used by, you know, anybody down there. We're already using it, and to have that access point, to me, seems to make sense, so that we're not dumping so much traffic onto Calumet. I know that this, you know, walkable, bikeable community that is being talked about tonight sounds great, but I've yet to see the sidewalks nearly as filled as our streets are, and much less so in winter. So that would be my comments for tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Is there anyone else, whether online or in person, that would like to speak regarding this public hearing? come up, state your name and address for the record, and please sign in on the sheet.
Ryan Reyes, 6 Civic Drive. We talk about people speeding down the side streets, and I just had a suggestion of installing speed bumps or speed humps. I noticed, like, I work in the city too, and on the side streets, you drive over speed humps, and it slows people down pretty good. So I thought that might be a fix.
The council is looking at that already, sir. Well,
And Ryan, I know in our neighborhood, they're trying it out. They've done kind of striping and they're gonna put some cones up to make the road a little bit narrower. So it's another issue that they're trying to do in some of these neighborhoods, so. But thank you. Anyone else like to speak on this matter? Going once? Going twice? I'll close the public hearing and bring it back to the commission.
I move we approve PC docket number 22-008, granting approval of the preliminary plat of Kamara addition to the town of Munster with following waivers. One from section 26-335B of the Munster subdivision ordinance, which states that a major access or business street shall have a right-of-way width of not less than 100 feet. Number 2 from section 26-313B, which states that the depth to width ratio of usable area of a lot shall be a maximum of 3.5 to 1.0, except not lot shall be more than 300 feet deep. And upon following conditions, 1, all necessary easements, agreements, approvals, both by the town and third parties have been made and approved for the completion of phase 1A and phase 1B. As shown on the development plans providing access to the Kamara addition from Fisher Street and Maple Leaf Crossing to the satisfaction of the town Munster Plan Commission. 2, a utility easement along the east edge of lot 9 and the width determined by the town engineer to be sufficient for accessing the town's water main be dedicated to the town. 3, all stormwater and engineering plans be subject to the final review by the town engineer.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Is there any other further discussion? Tom, for this, I'm having call roll call, please.
Okay, Counselor Mellon,
Yes.
Counselor Kulturitis,
Yes.
Rachel Brannigan,
Yes.
Bill Baker,
Yes.
Brian Specht,
Yes.
Roland Raffen.
Yes. Motion passed. Thank you. All right, the next item on the agenda, PC docket number 22010, Karma Cigar Bar LLC, represented by Joseph, how do you say your last name, Joseph? Spetloff, requesting approval of a developmental plan for a restaurant and cigar lounge at 9450 Kevin Avenue, Maple Leaf Crossing, PUD. Tom, I'll turn this over to you for a staff report, please.
Okay, earlier this evening, you granted a public hearing for planned unit development amendment to the Maple Leaf Crossing PUD to permit. Sorry. Cigar stuff here. To permit lot 7 to be revised to include a cigar bar, cigar lounge, and 9450 Charlotte Avenue. The second piece of this approval is the approval of the development plan, which is the approval of the building, approval of the lot. So you'll be looking at the architecture of the building materials, the landscaping plan, the lighting plan, and
Oh, is this the bar?
and that's essentially it, because it's, like I said, the PUD's already been approved. So I won't go over what we've already talked about, but I'll just note that there's some additional information that's been provided in connection with the development plan that wasn't really discussed in planning and development. And that was the sort of illustrative site plan. I'll just point out the footprint we've kind of already talked about. The only other items that are really, I think, of interest probably to the planning commission are the building renderings and the the overall landscaping plan. In the original PUD, there was a landscaping plan that was shown around that hub building. Well, obviously the footprint is different, so the plan has to change. This plan that they put in here is, I would say, substantially similar to what was proposed for the pub. There's landscaping around the foundation as well as, trees and grass. The other item that I'll just point out is, and we went over it a little bit with the amendment, but renderings of the building have been provided. They do meet our standards. There are a couple elements that I think are open to interpretation by the Plan Commission, which we've already discussed. They deal primarily with the location of the entrance, visibility of the entrance, and the sort of layout of that north facade. So those items are listed in your staff report. And there's one additional piece of information that was provided today. And that has to do with the photometric plan. A photometric plan, a revised photometric plan was provided. I haven't actually looked at it. I don't know if it complies with our standards, but I think it's been handed out today. And then secondly, there was some updates to the building plans that showed the building materials, which were not previously shown. So these are, and they're here so they can talk more to the actual proposal, but essentially the gray that you see here on the building is proposed to be stone. And then there's a number of metal panels that are being proposed on various accents throughout the building, for example, here. So that being said, we would be recommending that one of two things, either the development plan be approved, conditioned upon the final approval of the planning and development amendment by town council, or that it be tabled until such time as the town council could approve the planning and development amendment. Either way, the motion would be to approve the plan. Just a question of which condition you're more comfortable with.
Is that it, Tom? Any questions for Tom?
I have a question. So will we be seeing, so you said it won the town's council's approval. So is that coming to us on Monday, this Monday?
No, the PUD amendment was scheduled for a public hearing next month. So August, it'll come back to the Plan Commission for the public hearing. Plan Commission will make a recommendation to the council. And then depending on whether or not the attorney for the town council is comfortable that he has all the materials, minutes and findings of fact and those sort of things, that will be presented to the council at the next meeting that we could get that material together. So first or second meeting in August, yeah, probably the third week in August.
Any other questions for Tom? That being said, is there someone here that'd like to speak on behalf of the petitioner? Please state your name and address to sign in for the public record.
Good evening. My name is Joe Svetnoff. I'm with the law firm of Kopka Pink Stolen, located at 9801 Connecticut Drive in Crown Point, Indiana. We are here tonight representing Karma Cigar Bar LLC, also known as Karma Piano Bar and Cigar Lounge Bistro, the petitioner in this matter. We are here tonight for approval of a development plan for the Karma Piano Bar and Cigar Lounge Bistro located at 9450 Calumet Avenue in Munster, Indiana, which will be located within the Maple Leaf Crossing. As you are aware, the Maple Leaf Crossing is a planned unit development whereby this development has already been approved by the town and subdivided into 7 existing lots. Karma will be locating on lot 7 within this development, which is approximately 0.314 acres. The proposed structure located on the site will be approximately 6,400 square feet of enclosed space with an open air rooftop concept. As you've already seen, the proposed piano bar and cigar lounge bistro concept will encompass a first floor gastropub piano bar where food will be served and it will be smoke-free from 11 a.m. to 8 p.m. A second floor cigar lounge where food is also available. A third floor terrace areas where people can enjoy themselves there. And then a fourth floor open air concept rooftop that can be used for dining, entertainment, and private events, whereby food will also be served. We previously tendered the following information for your consideration of this development. The development plan of Karma, the renderings of Karma, the Maple Leaf Crossing traffic and parking study, proposed revisions to the Maple Leaf Crossing development standards, Lot 7 Maple Leaf Crossing master site plan, and the Maple Leaf Crossings PUD ordinance. Tonight, we are also tendering to you that you already have from the developer, a revised development plan of Karma and rendering of Karma. A couple quick facts about the project itself. The hours of operation of the facility itself are going to be from 11 a.m. to 11 p.m. nightly or daily. And the approximate investment into this building is going to be at least $3 million. Tonight we have our development team here, which includes myself, the owner, Darren Shaw, the developer, Jay Leisure, the attorney for the developer, Dave Beach, and our architect, Vishali Katnyamara, and also our owner, CFO, Han Kwok. What I'd like to do first is now turn the microphone over to the owner, who's going to come up and speak to you briefly. And then at this time, we'll be glad to field any questions from you. We appreciate your time and consideration on this matter.
Thank you. Please sign in and state your name and address for the public record.
My name is Darren Shah. Own Karma Cigar Bar. My home address is 1050 West Lane, Crown Point, Indiana 46307.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Darren Shah, and I've been owning a business since 2004. I converted my dad's business into a cigar bar back in 2016. Been successful. Now we are ready to open something beautiful in Northwest Indiana's beautiful community in Munster. If you guys have any questions, please feel free to ask.
So as a resident, someone that possibly could be coming here, will I have access to the entire place, the rooftop, or is there any like certain areas that are only members only, or is it open to the general public, the whole facility?
There will be a second floor, which will be accessible, half of them for members, half of them for non-members. But other than that, everything is open to public.
Right. What made you look at Munster and this area and particularly this development as a good place to open this kind of concept?
Munster is a beautiful community, so that's why.
Any questions?
I have one. I was just curious. It's an elevated building and it's beautiful. And so I was just wondering about the food offerings that you're, like the menu that you're considering.
We're offering a gastro club food. So it will be seasonal. We're still contemplating with the chefs and Purdue University, but we're going to have a good food.
Any other questions?
I'm just thinking, one of the things I'm curious about is the rooftop. I know, again, this isn't Chicago, but there is a hotel in Chicago called the Wit Hotel. It has a very exclusive rooftop situation. It's $10 per person to get even on the roof. I just want to make sure that, I mean, that's not something we're really looking for here, right? I mean, we want it to be
It's open to public.
family friendly, you know, I mean, not family, it's a cigar bar, but you know, just, it doesn't need to be an exclusive like club type situation.
It's, as long as you're 21 and over.
Yeah, sure.
You'll take our money, right?
And it's only open till
Although we
11.
wanted the experience.
Okay.
Any other questions for petitioner? It's a beautiful building.
Thank
It's a beautiful building.
Cool design. It's gonna definitely stand out and be a cool addition.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
this might be for the architect, but it has to do with the site plan and the trash corral. Tom, can you pull that up? It looks like, is that a sidewalk with the blocks? Are you having to roll the trash out past the sidewalk? How's the truck gonna pick up the trash? Because this is important at a cigar bar.
Yes, give me the SP 01.
I'll have you say your name and
Yeah,
address too. for
my
both
name is
records.
Vishali Jaswal Kachama. I am based out of Chicago.
She gets credit for the design.
Yeah, I'm
Beautiful,
sorry.
absolutely.
Thank you. My office is 161 North Clark, Suite 1600 Chicago, Illinois. Yeah, so if you focus on the SP 01, trash enclosure is a triangular area. And it's accessed by the one-way arrow traffic site that you see. Where is it? I can point to the. Yeah. Let me just hold this.
That's
So-
great. Except we can't see that screen.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah, so that's the trash enclosure, and then that's,
Okay, yeah.
and then this is the way, access way that's connected to the rest of the development.
It's a touch screen.
Oh, sorry, I did not know that. Okay, so. Yeah, so. This way, and then it just goes down into
No,
the.
I understand. I mean,
Yeah.
if I'm driving the truck, how am I picking up the actual container? Do I have to drive over the sidewalk?
Were
Mm,
you able to push a container in the street? and load it up the trash?
I believe
Really?
there will be, and this is more for the engineer. I believe we will sort the access
Okay.
out for, you know.
Just to keep that in mind.
Yeah, yeah. And I will let Torrego know that.
Thank you.
I have a couple questions. Maybe you can go over exactly what the building materials are on the facade. You know, obviously you got the stone in this part. What kind of raised metal panels are these? And obviously we know the glass windows and stuff. Just kind of go over design a little bit.
Yeah, sure. So the aesthetics is modern glass steel, and we wanted to also cater to the material and the building standards laid out in the PUD. And the most prominent material that we're using besides steel and glass is limestone panels that would go on the areas that you see rendered. Because of the lighting rendering engines, it came out gray, but they are limestone. And then we did update the renderings to the most current board that we sent out. And in that, we are also using some accent panels that were part of the original concept of the containers. So we did use that and incorporated it in the facades in various places like elevators and the staircase walls, and also on the back side where we have the deck, that would also have some of those accents.
Yeah, with with this kind of open concept and stuff, how are you hiding the mechanicals to the building?
So some of the mechanicals are actually going under the deck area, and those would have access to the air and circulation. The blank area that you see without the seating would take some of those rooftop units that are for the exhaust system mainly, because this requires a lot of good level of exhausting. Also, we would use the third floor, which is exclusively utility floor.
I'm sorry, you said that the exhaust equipment was gonna be on the blank, is that the container looking building that has the limestone? You're gonna put the exhaust on that blank space there? Could you point that out to me, please? And how you're gonna screen it, because that'll change the look of
Yes,
your building.
we would be screening it. That's, we still have to, our mechanical system is still in prelim. The intention is to screen the mechanical.
But you're talking about putting it here?
Yes, some of it would go there.
So I could sit up here and look down at the mechanicals.
But that does not overlook the area and the rooftop does not overlook onto the rooftop units. Yeah, so this is the elevator, and then, there will be service areas on this side. The main rooftop is here, and it opens up, and then all this is the area of interest of like the viewpoint and stuff. This area over here is what we were planning to utilize for the exhaust system.
The space, what that you have the space you have tables right next to it.
Yeah, but they will be screened.
It won't be that loud, just if they're listening to all the HVAC.
There would be some decibel level, but not to the extent that it's harming,
Less than 85 decibels.
Yeah, it would have some, but it won't be where it's occupant discomfort.
And that's for the patron space as well as for the kitchen?
No, the kitchen exhaust would be, I believe that comes out, can't see it in this render. The kitchen is underneath this area, if I may go to the.
Is there another diagram that shows all that? This looks like it's.
Yeah, it would be somewhere here, and that's on the triangular side, so.
Let me switch to.
Yeah, so the kitchen is in this area, and then the exhaust would be in this triangular area. So,
First landscape area.
yeah, which is like a residue space.
So there's rooftop equipment on some of this. So none of the renderings show any of the equipment, right?
Because we had like not designed them to the detailed level, so we did do some prelim study.
Wait a minute. Are we approving the whole thing here?
Are we approving the whole thing here? Yes.
Okay.
And we're not approving the whole thing here. But this isn't ready. This is not showing what we want, what we expect. So this isn't showing what we want or expect right now.
So is there any drawing that of the 900 pages that I got that shows mechanicals on this building?
There are none shown.
None shown.
They're proposed to be concealed.
Yeah,
Shown.
yeah, we have been out.
And
So,
Right, on the M series.
Yes,
M
yes,
2.0.
yeah.
At the end, just the M. line, M 2.0.
Okay, which document are we talking about?
This handout with just that. I'm sorry, what, you said M21?
2.2 shows.
Oh,
the
2.2.
Second to the last page, how about that? Second to the last page? Yeah. This is the third floor utility floor.
And then there are units that are under the deck, and those are considered.
Third floor tier C.
It's a pretty good size unit for a 30, 40 ton unit.
Because I haven't figured out
Yeah, you got an 18, 20 ton unit there. And then you got,
so 3, 4, 1, 2, 3.
Okay, so
Right.
I know. I know.
Looks like the seats are on top.
it's where's it on this? Because I'm looking at this.
It's on the M 2.2.
Yeah, I'm not so big a fan, but.
We have utility floor in which.
So this is
we have
on
concealed-
this is, you're showing on the third, the roof floor, right?
M 2.2.
It's on the third floor is where you're putting
Yes,
mechanical.
correct, correct.
Yeah.
And it's concealed under the deck area. It's also in the utility space, and then certain portion of it is required, is going to be in open area on the rooftop, where the blank space is shown in the rendering. And we would have a fence around it as virtual as the building. So we will be aesthetically ensuring that it does not cause, distressful use.
Yes, ma'am, but if I'm sitting outside, part of the approval that we have to provide is that it's not sitting next to somebody in a, at a table, and it's a loud piece of equipment blowing cigar smoke, that's all. I'm trying to get an idea of where
we
it's
do
sitting
have,
in
noise
relation to
can-
these, not only the ventilation system, but also the air conditioning and the heating system. Because I don't think, are they the same units? I don't think they're the same units, are they?
It is DOS, which is a very advanced air system. And it does take care of the air quality inside and out.
So a 10-ton HVAC unit is also going to be your exhaust system?
It incorporates the exhaust system. It's inbuilt. And it's a specialized system for cigar bars. And to answer your question on the noise cancellation, we do have auto features throughout the area for that we show in the renderings, but also they do not create as a high level of decibel that would cause occupant discomfort.
The water feature or the HVAC unit?
The HVAC.
I just have a question. Was all of this modeled together, like in Revit? I mean, would it be easy for you to just cut a section through it so that we could all see it and understand the mechanical, how that's gonna look a little bit better on the inside?
This is not built in Revit.
Okay.
Yeah.
So a separate rendering company did these images?
Yeah, it's
Okay.
separate.
I think it would be helpful if we could see how the mechanical's actually gonna look. I know you're saying it's concealed, but like,
Yes,
cut through the building would be helpful.
Yeah, I mean, the renderings look awesome. I just want to make sure that the building's gonna look like that when we see it.
Yes, absolutely.
So all these finishes are already picked out, and this is what you're facing the design build package off of these renderings, because once we enter this public record, this is what we're expecting. Obviously, the building will look like inside and out.
Well, no, that's conditional approval, so. I don't know, that's the architect.
Okay.
I'm sorry. I can't tell if that
This
does not.
view
Is no north south.
Turn-
So
Has HVAC units on a roof,
This,
you know, somewhere.
You just don't see it. The storage.
Okay.
Yeah.
Terrace.
And it overlooks onto the green yards.
Okay, so from this view, that you just showed me at 6 o'clock, this unit is
It's
in the water.
underneath, yeah, it's underneath the deck.
It's underneath the water. It's underneath this water, isn't this
Yeah.
water?
Yeah, so this is a deck.
So it's underneath the deck.
Yes.
Underneath the deck. It's underneath there. Gotcha. That's why you can't see it.
Really? It's enclosed.
No, it's underneath this little deck.
That's gonna pass code, huh?
How's it gonna draw?
I'll talk to the construction guy. You're gonna put a roof and enclose the HVAC units? Good luck.
Does that work? So
No, as long as you're drawing enough air, right?
I'm sorry?
And so that's a question for the HVAC mechanical contractor, obviously, to make sure you're drawing enough fresh air from the building.
Yeah, they would have panels for
Right,
fresh air.
even with, an enclosed panel to hide it from public view and also from the ceiling.
Yeah, sure. We would have fresh air intake panels.
Who is your HVAC consultant?
Peter Lipton,
Are they?
they're based out of Texas and they specialize in cigar ventilation systems.
The ventilation system that's gonna be used in this facility is high-tech cutting edge. So, because they wanna make sure when people come into the facility itself, there's no smell of smoke or anything else, so it's.
They're not going home smelling like smoke.
Correct, correct. So, I mean, it's
It's like the Vegas casinos, right? You overturn, you
Right.
turn the year over more.
Yeah,
all
like
that kind of
Vegas
stuff.
casinos right around this area.
Right, no, Vegas
Oh,
casinos
yeah.
turn the year over, right.
So, but they are spending a tremendous amount of money on those filtration systems to make sure that they keep the air clean.
Well, the last thing you want is a big glass building with window smoke all over the
Oh,
inside.
yeah.
right? You know.
I have to assume if with the amount of money that's being put into the building and the look of it, there's been so much care taken to make it look, I mean, this is not your typical, the typical building that we have in front to us, so I'm assuming
Typical pub.
it's not a typical pub. So I assume that you're not going to want to just, you know, distract from its beauty by not screening properly or having something not right. I mean,
Now, remember, we also have a public hearing where the petitioner is coming ahead in front of us next month. So if there's other questions, this can always be open. We can finish it up next month because they're still coming ahead next month. If the plan is all good, if there's anything you'd like them to address, they're gonna be in front of us next month. It's a public hearing, but we have a preliminary hearing on the other stuff earlier, right?
For the development plan,
Right.
for this agenda, item, it is a public hearing.
So, so we can have the public hearing, close it tonight, but there's questions, obviously, you have another opportunity because this is still coming in front of the commission next month.
For the PUD amendment.
Right.
it's been such a long meeting.
Right.
I forgot what happened.
I'm so confused.
Either way, that it has to come back to the plan
Yeah.
commission.
Right,
next
so be in
month.
front of us
So
next month.
whether you approve it conditionally or you table it. You still need to pass the PUD amendment.
Right.
For this development plan to be approved.
Public hearings?
We got
We
it,
have to
that's
have a
right. So
public
if there's any
hearing.
other discussion
Yeah.
first, before I bring it to a public hearing. Okay, that being said, I will open up to the public hearing. Is there anyone here that would like to speak on behalf of this petition? Whether online or in person? Going once? Going twice? I'll close the public hearing and bring it back to the commission.
Mr. Chair, I mean, this is a great building, in my opinion, and a outstanding addition. The only concern I have is what the aesthetics gonna look for the mechanicals, because we've done assumptions in the past of making sure that the developers know exactly what we're expecting, yet it turned out to be not true. So without a drawing that states what they're trying to put out forth, I think that should be a condition of anything that is made as far as approving this particular building.
I agree with that. I think we need to see another drawing, more of a section that shows us exactly what's going on.
Is there anything else you'd like the petitioner to present or bring back information to the commission?
What about the water features? Are we okay with the water features on the roofs? How that works? Is that gonna be just, we're gonna rely on the building department and inspection people?
I mean, as far as.
Is it gonna be a waiting pool, a baby pool? What is it?
Nice one, yeah.
I mean, that's for them.
Okay.
To answer the question.
You have to be over 21 to get in, so nobody's gonna be.
Well, it could be mud wrestling, Mr. Speck, for all I know. That would be a problem.
Be prohibited.
All right, well, I'll make a motion to approve docket number 22-010, approving the Carmel Bistro Cigar Lounge development plan and proposal use lot 7 in Maple Leaf Crossing Plan Unit Development at 9450 Calumet Avenue. Describing the staff report dated July 12, 2022, with the following conditions: that the town council approval of the proposed amendment to the Maple Leaf Crossing Plan Unit Development to permit a restaurant and cigar lounge on lot 7 submitted on the PUC docket 22-013. You go to school for this stuff? Final engineering review of the site plan for lot 7 and the condition to have a mechanical plan as far as the screening for all equipment associated with this, as well as more detail as it pertains to the water features.
Can you repeat on that?
No.
I second it. I second it. Any other discussion, comments, concerns? I'd like to see a presentation of later on before we start building this, of the actual building materials.
Okay.
And obviously, all this stuff has been submitted for record, so when it comes to the renderings, obviously, I'm expecting the inside and outside to look like these drawings.
Clarification question. With the conditions to review the mechanicals and the water features, do you want the plan commission to review those? Do you want them to bring that back to the plan commission next month?
I like to see.
Yeah.
I like to see them, absolutely. I'm a visual kind of guy.
I mean, there looks like there's 3 or 4 of them and there's waterfalls and it's cool, I get it, but how is that gonna, from a safety perspective?
What is the alternative that you and Jill would review it and
I mean, it would be, yeah, I guess it could be staff, but I guess my preference would be that the planning commission review it, since especially the water features, this is something that they're, it's a unique development. It's not no code or standards for it, so it's pretty discretionary. So I would prefer that.
Again, I got a question. So they've got to come back anyway next month, correct? So this isn't slowing them up as far as.
No, that's what I said earlier.
So-
They're coming in front of us next month.
So, yeah, I'm fine with what Bill is suggestions. Give us the information on the mechanicals and the water features and.
Oh, bring in building materials as well.
That'd be great. At least we have a visualize out. That's, assuming you're far enough along this game.
And hopefully you're
kind of an
further up on
idea
the
what you're
agenda.
Putting in
So
here.
we can, or have to still awake.
Okay.
It'll be a lighter agenda next week.
We don't ever get out of these before 10. What are you talking about?
Tom, do you have?
You guys have to keep the
the
bar open
motion?
longer than
Yeah,
11
hold on a
o'clock.
second. We have a motion and a second on the floor. I just want to make sure we're good with the motion. Yes.
Yeah,
Yes, very good.
I've got it.
Okay, so you have that. All right, with that being said, I'll call a roll count.
Okay. Is there a second?
I did, yeah.
Okay. Counselor Mellon,
Yes.
Counselor Kulturitis.
Yes.
Rachel Branigan.
Yes.
Bill Baker.
Yes.
Brian Speck.
Yes.
Roland Raffin.
Yes. Thank you.
So cut sheets, elevation with the penetration that comes through the roof and
Mechanical, make sure it's pretty J, make sure obviously you want to protect the people sitting in a patio that we're not getting high decibel levels and that kind of
So
stuff,
do all
right?
those
I hear the hearing commercials for class action suits. I'm sure you want everyone deaf at the cigar bar, right? You see the commercial, right, exactly.
He's been to too many of them,
Right.
yeah.
Just thank you to the commission for your time.
Thank you. It's a beautiful building. So I can't wait to see it look like these rendered.
Can't wait to go from 11 to.
All right, next item on the agenda, is there any other items for discussion?
Just finding
Oh, that's right, sorry. Cross items tonight. Yeah, let's go to finding the facts. First one's PC 2009. They have a chance to review this, and so what's the pleasure? And the first one, PC 2009.
Make a motion to approve.
We have a motion, do we have a second?
Second the motion.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Next item is 22005, finding of fact. Mr. Speck,
I make a motion to approve.
we have a motion, do we have a second? Second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Last one, PC 22009.
She's excited.
Make a motion to approve.
We have a second? Second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Any items for discussion, Tom?
Just note that the comprehensive plan will be kicking off next month and we'll have our first meetings. There will be a meeting involving the plan commission. We'll be part of that first meeting. There'll be a combination meeting of the student committees, and elected and appointed officials. So we're looking at August 3rd or 4th for that meeting.
I'll be out of town.
Mr. Chair, I have a question for Tom. Tom, what's going on with the streetscape thing? Where is that?
That's sort of, we're waiting to hear back whether or not a grant that the town applied for will be approved. So we're not expending any money at this point on that implementation because we're waiting we essentially applied for a grant that would pay for the entire thing. So we're waiting to hear that decision.
So it's contingent upon getting money.
I would say that we have the opportunity to basically do the entire thing through this grant. And if we're successful in getting the grant, then we'll do the entire thing in one fell swoop. If we don't, then we'll start taking sort of
50 feet at a time.
yeah, we'll start at Munster Christian Reformed Church, close the curb.
Region people do that real well, I've been personally involved with that.
It's broken down into different phases in the plan for implementation. So we would basically just start doing those implementation phases as the funding becomes available.
So it's exclusive of the new comprehensive plan you're starting next month.
The recommendations will be folded into the new comprehensive plan. So everything that we've done up till now will be, I mean, recently, obviously, the 2010 plan will be reevaluated. Certain projects will be brought forward based on the input that we get. Others will probably be abandoned.
Thank you.
One thing real quick, I had a discussion with Tom. I asked him about maybe writing the ordinance about requiring when buildings come in front of us for security cameras on corners and entrances and parking lot on the lights. I mean, saw everything that happened in Highland Park recently.
Yeah.
Cameras were huge to find what went on. So I asked him if maybe come up with an ordinance, bring it in front of us, for Mr. Whitlam to be able to come up with something required.
Are you gonna require that, or is that something that's already, huh?
I think we come up with some kind of ordinance requiring that make them, work with the, obviously, it's the safety.
Really?
chief. Yeah.
I want people to?
Well, I mean, cameras aren't a bad thing nowadays, today's technology, right?
Yeah, so you're spending other people's money again. Yeah, because that would be
You have
your
them all
thing.
legally?
On the light bulbs and go, right, they're cheap.
Right.
Come on, Bill.
The government, they used to do that. The government should make you do it. Yeah.
I make a motion to adjourn.
We have a motion, do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you, everyone.
Oh.
Thank you, Jay, for being great looking building.
You know, I have to say, I don't know if Mike is
Can we
actually.
just double back the numbers? See how that works?
Next time, we're gonna bring us better pictures.
We
We don't have good eyes anymore.
Yeah, 11 by 17, Jay, I left my glasses.
There's a little larger translation of this project.
Mine. She doesn't go to all those.
He just left here with my car.
Right?